The reason I share that story is quite funny because that's a pure example of why I know stress to the nth degree, because I put myself through so much doing stuff like that. And they're like, how'd you know? And I'm like, why else would you have your lock on? Like, the only time you put your phone sideways
It's because you're sleeping.
is just, you're on your phone sideways when you're lying down, and you shouldn't be on it. But the body is still processing the caffeine, and that will affect the deeper sleep cycles. Complete chaos, and then just like, I wake up and I'm in my bed, I'm sweating, my heart's like pounding. When we're in parasympathetic, that's when we can sleep. In sympathetic, we cannot. When we're in parasympathetic, we can burn fat, we can build muscle, we can repair our tendons, we can actually get aroused. I had exposed my penis to my team on like my first training session, and the coach was like, get out of here. And I was like, well.
Done something wrong.
Yeah, that's actually probably why I became a stripper, like, 15 something.
Hi my friend, and welcome to Unstuck, the best podcast on holistic health. My name is Nick, and honestly I wouldn't mind being your favorite host from now on. What does it feel like when you have to deal with any health related problem, whether this is severe or mild? Are you experiencing anything like that right now? If so, do you feel like you're stuck in that problem and you just want to solve it and get better? Have you noticed that regular medicine, most times, only worries about treating the symptoms rather than looking and fixing the root causes? I believe that optimal health requires a sprinkle of awareness combined with an holistic approach. That way, I truly transitioned from the stuck body-mind condition to an unstuck one. And I apply and will apply this same concept to any new health-related problem that comes up in my life. This podcast is not about me, but it's about how I can use my experience combined with my guest experience and expertise to help you get unstuck too, while I gain more knowledge at the same time. So get ready to hear some interesting stories and pay attention to facts and tips my guests will share with you, and I need you to make those yours so that you can implement them in your daily life. To help you do just that, today I had a chat with my amazing guest Joshua Hardy. He's a former heavy diesel mechanic and male entertainer who's now a gym owner and coach. Josh now focuses his skills on the mechanics of the body and mind, learning from his ongoing experience as an upcoming endurance athlete. He's also constantly refining his holistic approach to health and fitness to deliver to his gym members, clients, and the public. His holistic approach is grounded in 4 pillars: movement, stress, sleep, and nutrition. And today we specifically had a chat about sleep and stress management. Our conversation went in multiple directions for the sake of the holistic approach. So all of this to say, you do not want to miss this one. Welcome to Unstuck podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to talk about sleep and stress. Can you please tell me why sleep is so important?
Yeah, great question. I'd actually probably start with the fact that every human has a body. So my whole philosophy when I'm talking to people and actually coaching them is to help them understand the fact that everyone by nature is a Homo sapien. And so as a Homo sapien, that's the kind of the currency, the language that we all share. And so every Homo sapien needs sleep. Every Homo sapien has a nervous system. Every Homo sapien has a lung, a heart. They have all these same vital organs. And so in terms of sleep, it's one of the most important, I should actually say it's the most important recovery process as a Homo sapien. Apart from, we rest, we get food, we get nutrition in, we need those important parts, and then we can go to these things and do stretching, we can do mobility, we can engage in these activities to help calm our body down and nourish our body. But the sleep is actually the fundamental thing. It's kind of like the overarching or the first lead domino in the recovery process. And so if you look at how the earth works and how nature works, we have day and we have night. So night is more around the off switch and day is more around the on switch. It's the outward exertion and then the inward restoration. And so the sleep phase is that primary phase for sleep, for restoration and recovery of the body, the inward, the nourishment part of the body. And that starts with sleep, and that's why I'm so big on it.
Many people don't take that seriously, I guess.
No. We live in an artificial environment now. We don't live in a world where when the sun goes down, we go to sleep. When the sun comes up, we wake up again. It's not like that anymore. We're literally in a studio with lights because we just plug them into a power point. Ever since power was invented, that was pretty much the start of the 24/7 world. And so we've kind of evolved into this species that lives in this artificial environment we've become disconnected from the environment that we've come from, if that makes sense. And we're kind of like, because we live on grid with power and with gas and all these amazing things that allow us to like experience a really modern lifestyle, our bodies are still designed from how we used to live in caveman days and tribal days. And so a lot of work that I do is actually reminding people where we came from in terms of our evolution, and then finding ways to integrate those principles into the modern life. Because it's not about going back into the forest and living like a tribes person. I think that's a little bit silly, but what is important is to understand that that's where our bodies still live and our DNA still lives. And so it's trying to find a way to harmonize the principles of who we are by our nature, and then integrate them into our modern life and the modern environment.
So if I asked you, what are the essential components of sleep?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of, if you speak to different coaches and different sleep scientists, they'll probably give you a different array of essential principles. But what we teach as a philosophy in our gym and our coaching style is that quality and quantity are both very important. And I like to use a lot of I'm about to say simple language. I'm going to explain something that sounds complicated in a moment, but we try and use as much simple language as we can to really help people understand. And so quality of sleep is super important because as people may or may not be aware of, is that when we go to sleep, we have different stages. So we have deep sleep and we have light sleep. And so we need to ensure that our sleep is quality enough so that we get into those deeper stages of sleep, because the deeper you are into sleep, the more powerful your restoration becomes. And so that's the quality aspect. And with these deep stages that we go into, we're always like rhythmically rolling in and out during our sleep. So if we want an ideal stage, which is what we call stage 4 or stage 5 or REM sleep, which people may have heard of, if we're trying to get people into those deeper stages, you need to allow for enough time to roll in and then back out and then roll in and then back out. And we're trying to have enough sleep, 7 to 9 is the common middle ground. For me, I always try to aim for a minimum of 7, but I personally aim for a minimum of 8. So if push comes to shove or I've got a busy day, I'm like, all right, sweet, fuck it, I'll just get 7 hours of sleep in. But I will always strive for 8 and strive for 9 because it puts me in the window of getting a whole nother rolling back into that deeper stage of sleep again.
Actually, I have a question. If you can explain the different cycles in that happen in sleep.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So arguably there's 4 stages, arguably there's 5 stages. So I'll mention the 5 stages. So I think I'll try and get these right. So stage 1 is actually drowsiness, and which is why it's not really considered a sleep. Then you've got stage 2 with a light sleep. Stage 3 is like a moderate sleep, I believe. And then stage 4 and stage 5 is deep sleep and then REM sleep. But what's most important to know is that stage 4 and 5 are the important ones. So when we let's get the audience familiar with what is like which sleep is which. So this is my question to you, the audience. Imagine this. Have you ever woken up after sleeping and you just kind of let's say you had your alarm set for 6 a.m. and then you just kind of loosely just drifted out of your sleep and you just kind of like woke up and then it was 5:55 and you're like, oh fuck, I'm awake, I beat my alarm by 5 minutes, sweet. And so that's you rolling out of a light sleep. So when you're in a light sleep, you're basically only just asleep. So if I was like just dropping into a light sleep and then somebody walked past my room, then I'd hear the footsteps. I would notice it, or I'd notice like, because I got birds in my room, I'd notice the birds like moving around, climbing around the cage or whatever, or chewing on something that she shouldn't be chewing on. And so I could notice that in my light sleep. That everybody can. That's what a light sleep is. When you're in a deep sleep, and if you ever wake up out of a deep sleep, it's kind of like, oh, where, like, is it Saturday? Is it oh fuck, it's Monday. It's Monday, I gotta go to work. Like, you don't know what day it is, you don't know what your name is, you don't know who you are, you don't know where you are. Like, that's waking up out of a deep sleep. So that's kind of the difference between a stage 1 and a stage 5 sleep. And so the stages are basically represented by how deep you are in that sleep. The higher the sleep number, the deeper in that stage you are. And so you go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4 to stage 5, and then you drift out of stage 5 into stage 1. And so that's that cycle.
What about the REM?
REM is stage 5.
Okay.
REM
so waking up during or after REM sleep, is it good or bad?
It's bad. I
always wake up after a dream. Like not necessarily like I get woken up by a dream because it's bad. Sometimes I just wake up and actually I try to remember the dreams. It's funny.
Well, that's a point. I can't actually answer that fully because that's outside of my scope of knowledge. However, I'm a big dreamer and I can pretty much remember all of my sleeps every day. And also, without going too off track, sleep journaling is a great thing to do. But sleep journaling is actually a skill. So sleep journaling is basically the moment you wake up, you just write down every single thing you can about that dream. Everything, what you can feel, what you noticed, what you saw, because the subconscious is thought to communicate to us via symbolism as well. So when you look at it's kind of like learning to decode how your brain is communicating back to you, because I know I'm drifting off, but this is a really fun fact. You know the periodic table?
Yeah.
The science table? The periodic table was actually done in a guy's dream. So he was working on it for so long and he couldn't figure it out. And then he actually ended up just like figuring out in his dream, and he woke up and he was like, fuck, and he just like wrote it all down, because the subconscious mind is so much more smarter than the conscious mind, because the conscious mind just deals with all the shit that we don't really need to deal with all the time. So the subconscious mind is a powerful tool, and a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, they will think about their biggest problem just before they go to sleep, so that they can allow their brain to solve that during the night. And I do it a lot. I actually wake up and I'm like, fuck, here we go. And part of that green light activities, the go activities, is to have a journal nearby so you can start writing down, because that's energizing and inspiring as well, just to start writing things down. But the more you do that, the more you do dream journaling, the more it actually, the better your recall becomes. And I don't know how that gets affected by sleep cycles.
So I find that for example, I have a dream, I wake up, if I start thinking about the details of the dream, I remember it all.
Yeah.
And then maybe during the day, it's already gone. It's as funny as that. Like, and sometimes I message people if I dream about them, or I do that. Just something that is like, oh, today I dreamed, about your dad died, for example, something weird.
Yeah.
And I find that I dream a lot. Yeah. And it's not maybe me dreaming more than other people. Maybe I remember more than others. So I don't really know, but yeah, that was the question.
No, I think it's a cool thing to discuss, because I know a lot of people listening to this would actually be dreamers, and not everyone dreams, and a lot of people do dream as well. And a lot of people down the spiritual, the psychic, the energetic route really give that a lot of weight and value as well, and really see a lot of validity to that. And I've definitely noticed some spookiness down that as well, and I definitely give that some credit as well. I don't live my life based on those rules, but I think it is very important to, whether it's an energetic or a spiritual or even just a psychological thing, I think it's a very good idea to actually acknowledge the dreams that we have, because at the worst case scenario, we're still just practicing like brain exercise. At the bottom line, we're still just exercise. Like, dream recall is healthy for the mind, because it's you're actually practicing mental logistics, and that's really good. So going back to sleep anyway, you've got your 5 stages. Stage 1's nice and light. Stage 5 is nice and deep, and you're gonna cycle through those. And basically, what needs to happen is that, let's say that we've done a workout, right? And so we've torn these muscle fibers, we've done a run, or we lifted weights, and our body's sore and it needs to replenish it, needs to fix itself, right? We've done these micro tears, these damages to the tendons and the ligaments, and we put under all this stress. And so what happens is that after our training session, we eat lots of good healthy food with lots of protein and carbohydrates and lots of healthy fats in it, to give our body all of the actual nutrients and the actual physical cells and building blocks and atoms and molecules, right, to actually put into the body, so the body can then utilize those to literally, I don't know if people know this, they probably heard this, but like when you're lifting weights, like imagine your muscles are like ropes, because they basically are. And then if you keep putting a rope under so much stress, the rope will actually split, and it will have these little frays on it. And then so if you were to repair that rope, you'd probably get like some tape or something, and you'd re-wrap it, or you'd re-tie it together. But as you wrap it around, it would actually come back thicker. And so that's basically what happens with, or like cement, cracked cement, you just kind of fill it back in, right? And so that's what the body does. And so the body actually needs legitimate protein cells to actually to patch the muscles back together, and that's what makes muscles thicker. And then when the muscles get thicker, we visually look bigger, and then we classified as muscular, right? And so we do the damage to our body, and we eat the nutrition, but then those recovery that patching process only happens in stage 4 or stage 5. It only happens in the deep stages of sleep, because when the body's like out and about and doing things, you can't go into repair mode because we're still doing activity, we're still getting shit done. And so the body has to shut down all of its other systems, such as thinking and operating and talking to people. It needs to stop doing all of that. It needs to stop eating so that it can focus all of its energy on pure repair. You know, like a mine site, you shut down. Or if you want to actually do mechanical servicing on a vehicle, you actually have to turn the vehicle off. If you drive your car into a workshop and you put it up on the hoist, you turn the thing off, and then you've got to drain the engine fluid, you've got to drain the oil, you've got to replace the filters, you pull the cylinders out, you wipe them down, you put new seals back in. I'm a diesel mechanic, by the way. And then you rebuild the engine, you rebuild the transmission, or you do whatever you need to do as part of the servicing protocol. But everything, the vehicle has to be taken off the road in order for that to happen. And then you have to go through the process of actually replacing things, putting things back on, cleaning things out, replacing fluids. And then when it's ready to go, then you put it back on the road, turn the car on, and then it's good to go. That is what happens in these deep stages of sleep. So that's what happens for our body, and then our mind also does the same thing as well. So I keep mentioning this concept of information. We've got information coming in. There's all these, like every person, like especially for you today, like I've just fucking boom, 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 all of this information that I've just been sharing, that I've known about what I've learned during my time, my career as as a gym owner and a coach, right, and an athlete. You're going to have to go to bed tonight, and your brain's going to have to really consolidate all of this information, and it's going to process it, and it's going to discard what's not useful. It's going to hold on to what it thinks is going to be important, and then it's going to try and connect dots and be like, all this information that Josh has given me now, how can I store this in my mind in a way that's going to be useful for me, in a way that I'm going to need it in the future? And so the brain's going to go through those processes. But again, the brain can't do that if you're still going through the day, taking on more information. That's why you need to go into those red strategies to stop distractions so that your mind can stay in that recovery space. And so again, in stage 4 and stage 5, that's when these recovery processes are going to occur. And another fun fact is, I talked about like you're going to meet lots of people, right? I'm going to drive to the gym after this and go to work, and so I'm going to drive down the highway, right? And in one like 20-minute drive from here to the gym, I'm going to think about how many signs, how many cars, how many faces, how many number plates, how many words I'm going to read just from here to my drive to the gym. Then I'm going to go, it's my Asian grandma's birthday today, I'm going to go have brunch with them and the family. Then I'm going to go see them, and I'm going to be discussing things. And so all of the things that that's all information. And so I don't need to remember all of that. So when I go home tonight and go to sleep, my brain's going to be like, I don't need to remember what was on that on the specials deal of the groceries. I don't need to know that broccoli is at fucking $2.99 a kilo or whatever. Like, I don't need to know that stuff. And so the brain will be constantly discarding all the information that it knows it's irrelevant. But again, it only happens when we're asleep or when we go into a deep meditation as well. It's really helpful. So that's why it's good to meditate, and I actually nap during the day for that as well. But having those practices to help the mind like just discard a lot of information to create some space in there. All of that stuff with the mind and the body occurs in a stage 4 and a stage 5 sleep. And that's why deep sleep is essential. That's why quality sleep is essential. And these 5 stages, or these 4 stages that we have, however way you want to look at it, as we cycle in and out of these stages, it's going to take us on average as a human between 90 to 120 minutes to go through one full cycle. So I've just played around with mine, and I've figured out that I'm pretty much a 90-minute guy. But some people, so that's an hour and a half to go through a full cycle, and that would be 2 hours for someone else to go through a full cycle. So you want to consider that you want to be going to at least like 4 to 5 cycles a night, because depending if you're a 90-minute cycle person or you're a 120-minute cycle person, that's going to put you at about 7.5 to 8 hours worth of sleep to go through full cycles. Plus, you really want to give yourself about like 15 to 30 minute buffer time to get to sleep as well, because like your first phase of getting into sleep is going to be a bit more challenging, because that's the first transition going from and I think that's why stage 1 is arguable, because this, and I'm literally figuring this out as I say, because I would imagine you'd have stage 1 to 5, because drowsiness again is like, is it a stage sleep or not? But you'd probably go from being awake into drowsiness and then into stage 2, 3, 4, and 5. But then once you are coming out of a 5, you wouldn't go back into drowsy, you just go back into a light sleep. So,
yeah, I don't know.
Because when I first researched sleep cycles, it was there was 4 stages. But then when I researched it, when I was writing the documents for our coaches for the training system, I stumbled across the 5 stages, and I was like, well, is it fucking 5 or is it 4? But either way, drowsiness is like just a super, super, super light stage of sleep anyway. But we need to, again, make sure that if we have a good ritual in place with amber light strategies coming into our sleep, then we're going to find out that we can actually accelerate us getting in. We can pretty much bypass that whole drowsiness phase, because the drowsiness phase is what we're encouraging by having consistent sleep schedule and our really delicate amber light strategy to really slow us down so we can roll into a deeper sleep as soon as possible. So that's quality and quantity. Another one that I'm really important on is circadian rhythm alignment. And so that's the complicated one.
That's a scary word.
That's a scary word. It's a lot of syllables and a lot of spaces in there as well. But circadian rhythm is essentially your body clock. So prior, I just mentioned that we have day and we have night. And so our body has its day and its night cycle. And so when people go on night shift, it essentially reverses their body clock. So when the sun goes down, then they're deliberately trying to make themselves wake up. And that's really challenging for the body, because the body still responds to our environment. And so it responds to our environment and the information it gives us. So right now we're in a studio of light, and so that light being received by our body is information being received by our body, and our body goes, okay, I understand now that I'm being exposed to light, and therefore I need to promote wakefulness. I need to be alive. I need to be alert so that I can function and do these things. But when there's artificial light and there's no actual sunlight, the body's like, I'm pretty sure it feels like it's kind of nighttime, but then I'm getting all this information saying that it's not. And so the body's kind of in this this mid-ground, this gray zone, like, is it daytime, is it nighttime? I'm not really sure. But then the person is actually like, no, we're doing things. And they start drinking coffees at nighttime and all these other things. And so the body's getting these mixed signals of what's happening at nighttime, and that just messes up the body clock. And then what will happen is they'll come off night shift, and then it'll be daylight, and then they're trying to sleep. But then when they're trying to sleep in daylight, their body's like, I'm pretty sure the sun's still up, so maybe I should be awake. And so they're getting maybe their 6 or their 7 or their 8 hours of sleep, but then because the body's so confused, it's getting mixed signals. It's not really dropping into those deeper stages of sleep, and then those recovery processes aren't really occurring, and they're not happening to their full capacity. And so circadian rhythm alignment is just a fancy way of just saying, align your body clock with the sun. And that also goes as far to, this is a really hard thing to do. Luckily, I'm self-employed as a gym owner, so I can do this. But to really allow yourself to sleep in more during winter, and then just send it during summer. And as the sun comes up, be like, let's go, let's get up early, and all that kind of stuff. And I've noticed how my body has worked with those challenges as I've experimented with phases of getting up at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, in the morning, and then going to bed at like 10 and 11. And that's been doing that a lot more recently as well. I've been playing around with my endurance training and getting up later and wanting more sleep. But I've also gone through phases of like all through winter, like getting up at 4 a.m. and then getting in a cold shower and just shining lights in my face to like stimulate this wakefulness, but experiencing, like really noticing those challenges. Like, you're a music guy. So you were talking before about, if there's echoes in the room, like you can hear them, but I can't, because you're attuned to that. And so I'm a body guy. I'm one of those body mechanics. And so most people don't really notice those little nuances between as their body goes from environment to environment, or room to room, or time to time. But I notice those in my bodies, and that's why I'm kind of a coach, like talking about this stuff. So circadian rhythm alignment is a really good one, quality and quantity. And there's a few other things that we can kind of go into, but also just having like a really good environment around your sleep as well. And really that's more around your rituals is what I kind of call those, because again, I mentioned we live in a 24/7 environment. And so when the sun goes down, our phone's still buzzing. Like we might still have to drive home from work, or the TVs are on, and I'll still go home. I'll still be awake for a couple hours when the sun's down, and that's just the world we live in. So by having these deliberate, intentional practices or these rituals in place, then that allows us to allows us to combat this world that we live in. And when I say combat, is that at night time, if we start to deliberately relax and we deliberately minimize light. So for example, I tell all my clients to buy candles, and if they don't feel safe buying candles because they might fall asleep leaving them on, I've actually done that and had a few near misses, but I've got fairy lights above my bed. And fairy lights are like one of my new favorite things in the whole world. I actually buy people fairy lights for like presents and stuff now, because it actually just creates a really like a sensual, not sexual, it can be, but a sensual environment. And when I turn the fairy lights on, I'm just like, oh yeah, it's just like, it's a really warming sense when I turn my lights off, but fairy lights on. And I've actually got candles, which I shower in candlelight, as a matter of fact, because I'm lucky enough to have an ensuite. So I'll actually turn my fairy lights on, turn my main lights off, and that's when I've like finished my dinner and I've gone into my room where I'm not going to exit until I wake up in the morning. So I'll go into my room, turn my fairy lights on, and then I'll go in the bathroom and I'll light my candles, and then I'll get ready for bed and have my shower, brush my teeth and all that kind of stuff in candlelight, and then go back in. But what that information is telling me as part of my nighttime routine is that it's time to go to bed, Josh. It's time to wind down. And so my body will start to prepare itself for sleep, because it's noticing that the light is dimming. And so I've created that neuro association. My brain now knows that candles and fairy lights and brushing my teeth mean sleep time. And so it starts to get into that. But a lot of people just like turn the TV on and then they'll just go to sleep, and like Netflix playing or something, put the 30-minute timer on the TV. But then they go into bed and there's all this like these flashing lights and these noises, it's just information. Light is information, sound is information, heat and temperature, it's all information. The body is constantly receiving, no matter what, because we're just always listening. We're always receptive to our environment. That's why we have eyelids to stop the light, but our ears don't have lids on them. We're just constantly receiving. Our skin has receptors to understand what's happening, whether it's hot or cold, whether someone's actually touching our skin, or even if we're just getting exposed to light. So that information is always constantly hitting our body, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. So we need to find ways to deliberately present our body with the information that it's time to go to sleep, and then vice versa in the morning, finding ways to actually like lift our bodies up and promote wakefulness and stimulate the body, because it's like the sun's up, it's go time.
What about consistency?
Consistency is a really important one as well. So as creatures of habit, our body is always adapting to things. And so, like I said, if we put these routines and these rituals in place, by having routines and rituals in place, they will help encourage our body to get prepared for things. So I use the analogy of, if we eat dinner at 7 o'clock every single night, at about 6:30, just roughly 6:30, our body will start to get hungry, because our body is anticipating food. And so people who religiously go to bed at 8 o'clock, no matter what, 7:30 hits, and then they just start getting tired, they start yawning a little bit, and that's their body like preempting sleep. And it's actually starting to, it's biochemistry, the internals of the body are starting to walk its way into sleep, or with dinner times walking its way into digestion, and it makes the body more efficient at that process. And so sleep consistency is really important, because if we are just like going to bed at 9 o'clock one day, then going to bed at 10 o'clock the next day, then the next day we're up till 12 o'clock, like midnight, and then all of a sudden we're up at 4 a.m. and then we're up at that erraticness, the body's like, I don't know when to go to bed, I don't know when to wake up. And so it's kind of like on standby, because like something could happen at any minute right now, and we don't know when it is, and so by creating that consistency, it's creating that routine, and it's allowing that body to kind of settle into a rhythm, and it doesn't actually have to waste energy. And actually, like, you actually end up conserving more energy, because the body again is more efficient at transitioning in and out of its phases throughout the day.
I really like the idea of rituals, and I have many myself. Like you mentioned, you have like the lights and the candles,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
use LED lights in my room.
Oh yeah, cool.
But not like crazy, like fancy, just like colors. There are like, for example, I like red.
Yep.
So I just put like a red that looks a little bit like, like a sexy red, I would say, but it really calms me down.
Yeah.
What's a easy way for people to design or to decide what rituals they have to, put in place to have a better sleep?
Yeah, awesome. Great question. So we actually teach a thing called the traffic light analogy, or the traffic light system, so to speak. And so this is probably more relevant for people who are in Australia. If you're in Australia, when you're driving on the roads, as you are approaching a light that's about to turn red, so it'll be green at this stage, and green means go, so all this traffic is passing through, and then the amber light will come on, this like orange golden light will come on, and that means slow down. And so we will slow down. It means that we know that a stop is about to come, and so we're slowing down, and then the red light comes on, and then we just stay there. Red light means stop, and then boom, green light's back on, and then we just go again. And so that's a really good rule of thumb to follow for designing your rituals. And so when you're looking at rituals, on what activities or what things would you put in at nighttime, you put in amber light. Amber light activities are things that are going to slow you down and transition you from the stage of wakefulness into the stage of sleep. Once you are at the red light, which is when you have finally fallen asleep, obviously you can't do anything whilst you've fallen asleep because you're asleep, but the idea around the red light is employing some sort of strategy that will help you remain asleep. And then once you wake up, it's green light, and then just like all the green light activities. So let's start with the amber light. That's slowing down. We'll start from nighttime, going into sleep, and then what to do when we wake up. So as a rule of thumb, the amber light activities is minimize light and movement. And then the green light activities are maximize light and movement. Light is the main source of information that tells us if the sun's up or the sun's down. And so if we expose our body to as much light in the morning, that's a green light stuff. And if we move around, that's telling our body to go awake. And on the other side, at nighttime, when it's amber light time, it's like minimizing the light to represent that there is a sunset, the sun's going down, and then deliberately, consciously slowing our body down. So an amber light activity would be removing primary light, removing all of your main white and blue lights, which is also a really good point that on the color spectrum, red is the darkest of all the colors. So if someone can imagine the color spectrum, if you look at the color spectrum, you have on one side, it goes like, I'm going to try my best here. It starts from red. It goes from like red, like orange into like yellow, and then it transfers into green, and then it goes into like purples and blues. And so the purple and the blue is actually that's why we have blue light. Have you heard of blue light?
Yeah,
right?
I use the glasses there.
Yeah, blue light glide. And we have our, I think on iPhone it's called night shift or something. Yeah. And then it's just called like blue filter on the Samsung or whatever. But what the blue filter is, if anyone's got that on their phone, when you turn your night filter or your blue light filter on, the screen actually goes orange.
Yeah.
And so when you remove blue from the color spectrum, you're actually only left with orange. And so when you look at the color spectrum, like the orange, and if you go darker than that's red. So red is actually, I also use red at nighttime, as a matter of fact, because from like a science perspective, it's like the darker, it's got the least blue light, because the sun releases ultraviolet rays, UV rays, which is what we've all heard of. UV ray stands for ultraviolet. Violet is purple. Purple is next to blue on the color spectrum. So when we're removing the UV from the color spectrum, we're removing all of the blue and the purple segments of it, which only leaves us with red. So that's kind of like a side explanation as why things actually go orange. And the more severe your blue light filter is on your screen, the more red your screen goes. And so that's the color spectrum. So going back to these amber light activities, where we're finding ways to really deload the mind, really relax the mind, calm us down. And so journaling, meditation, breath work. Doesn't have to be anything crazy with breath work. Just I use a simple 10 breath drill. So one rep would be a full inhale with a little bit of a hold at the top as well, just to allow a bit of stretching and also a moment of peace. And then an exhale without blowing into the mic. and letting that breath tension just really push the ribs out, but then follow through by actually forcing more oxygen out. So, and then a bit of crunch.
Actively.
Yeah. And then 10 full breaths to that. That really calms the body down. That actually stretches the ribs and relaxes them as well. So just any kind of breathing drills. So I'll just do 10 reps of that if someone's like really mentally stimulated. I also encourage doing things that make you feel fulfilled, because a lot of people will not want to go to bed because they feel like they're unsatisfied with their day.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
I need to do every day I need to do something that is that adds to what my purpose is or to what my goals are. Otherwise, I feel like I don't deserve to sleep.
Yeah. You got to do a you thing. You got to do it. And for some people, it's just watching TV, and that's okay. Or for some people, it's watching a book, and that's okay. But as long as the intention is that you're doing it for you, but you're not doing it to distract yourself from the fact that you're disappointed with your day or something like that. You're wanting to find ways to create emotional fulfillment. And so that could just be having a big cuddle with your partner if you've got one as well, or just spending time with them, or cooking food together, or whatever. Having things like lavender teas is a really good idea as well. Any sort of like yoga or meditation, any sort of literally anything that calms you down. And I kind of break the body down, or I break the self down into 4 aspects. And so you've got the mental aspect, you've got the emotional aspect, you've got the physical aspect, and you've got the spiritual aspect. So the mental is a matter of the mind, the emotional is a matter of the heart, the body, the physical is a matter of the body, and the spiritual is very similar to the emotional aspect. The spiritual is a you thing. So when I talked about the Homo sapien aspect, as a Homo sapien, we still have a mind, we still have our emotional body is actually more of the biochemistry of what's happening in the body. If the body is like anxious, or if it's angry, it'll feel hotter and it will actually feel more tight. But if it's happy or joyful, it'll start to feel more pleasant, and the gut is actually acting in a different way, and the lungs and the heart acting in a different way. So that's kind of, emotions are more of the mechanical energy that's happening within us. But then on our spiritual side of, obviously spiritual can just be any sort of actual spiritual way, or spiritual or religious views that you have. That's more than okay. But I just kind of bucket that into your character. Like you and I, we're both Homo sapiens. We both have arms, we both have legs, we both have eyes, nose, mouth. We have these senses, and we have all these things that make us a Homo sapien. But you like to sing. I don't like to sing as much. So I still sing a little bit, but with my body, with my Homo sapien body, I like to go run endurance sports and go try and train for an ultra marathon. So a spiritual thing for me is to dream about running 100K, is to dream about doing these events in 24 hours, and to find ways to nurture that. And whether that's writing about them, watching guys on YouTube that are already doing that stuff, that really serves my character, my personality, which is my spirit. It's that invisible life force that animates someone. And so that's the spiritual aspect. So finding ways to either serve or nurture or restore any of these 4 aspects is what would be an amber light activity. Is there anything else? Like a hot shower or a hot bath, magnesium baths. I'm a big fan of magnesium baths, where you just get the you can go for a float. You've had plenty of floats. You float all the time.
I personally didn't like it.
Oh yeah,
to be honest, because I feel like that my posture was weird while I was floating. I feel I was, and you can't really change that. It's like
yeah. I know exactly. It's quite funny you say that, because I experienced that a few times, and because I'm so hypersensitive of my body, because I spend so much time working on it, when I lay down in the thing and there is no resistance, I can feel myself twisting. I'm like, no, like I'm so much more tighter on my right side than on my left. And I have had times where there's a thing called fascia within the body, and it's kind of a surface level piece of flesh. It's all within the body, but a big aspect of it that holds tension. If we just imagine that our skin is a layer that holds tension, and so when you can actually like manipulate and massage it, like if you give yourself kind of like a Chinese burn, like a non-aggressive Chinese burn, you can actually loosen that fascia up. And so I would actually really just this little, I would sweep my skin and wipe my skin to try and loosen that skin tension off, just so I could relax in those tanks. But going back to just a magnesium bath, someone can just go to the shops. You can just buy a big bag of magnesium salts, and just pour a bunch into your bathtub, and then that really gets into the skin, and with the heat as well, everything softens up and you can just feel super, super relaxed and super calm as well. And so if magnesium baths aren't your thing, or you don't even have a bath, you can just have a hot shower. But then there's also supplementation that you can have as well. So in terms of supplementation, magnesium is always a great one, because we tend to be very deficient in magnesium, just as the general Australian diet is, just based on the quality of our soil, so I've heard, and also just farming that's based on mass production rather than farming that's based on quantity than quality of food. So we're actually lacking a lot of nutrients anyway, and that also means that when we microwave our food, I think a lot of people aren't aware, but when we microwave our food, that zaps a lot of the nutrient. It kills the micronutrients in our food. So supplementation of getting the right things that to top our body up with what's essential, and magnesium's one of that. Magnesium has might be more than that, but it's at least 130 known roles in the body. It's not just like a muscle relaxant. It really the nervous system needs magnesium in the system to function as well. If the nervous system doesn't have that supplementation, the magnesium in the system, then it can't regulate its stress levels, and then so it can't even get itself down into, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment, parasympathetic, right? Yeah. Which is that rest and digest state. So supplementation's good with magnesium. For a lot of people, B vitamins are good as well, because that's like a stress complex. I actually deliberately take a B vitamin complex, and on the bottle it's called stress complex, because as a business owner, but also just my personality and with my training style, I'm a very excitable human being as well, so that adds to that stress aspect. So B vitamins are good.
B as in B12, or?
I would take a B complex. I can't remember the ones, but I think it's thiamine and niacin are really important ones, and I think that's B2, B6, I think, and B12. But that's why I say get a B complex, because it will cover all bases, and you can get brands that will deliberately say stress on it, and it's more optimized to have the B vitamins that we need. I know like a fair bit about supplementation and nutrients, but there's also a lot that I don't know as well, because all I need to know is like I need the stress bottle. That's what I need. Yeah. And there's another one, any sort of adrenal support. So our adrenal glands are the glands within our body. I think they sit somewhere around about here, but the adrenal glands have
here, as in your chest.
Actually,
for those one that are listening.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah. I was just putting my hands around my chest area. Yeah, it's like, somewhere. It's like, I believe they kind of like. This is going to be a terrible way if some anatomy nerd's going to shoot me for this, but kind of like lungs, how there's two on each, there's one on each side, and I think they look quite similar, but they're way, 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 way smaller, like tiny. I think maybe the size, maybe thumb or something, and just like deep into the chest somewhere. But that's as far as I'll go. But they are things that produce adrenaline and cortisol, and so both of those hormones are, when they're active in the system, that's because we have been promoting wakefulness. People have an adrenaline dump, they know that their body's going to be super ramped up. And so if there's cortisol in the system, the cortisol will be flowing through the system, not as a stress hormone, as a matter of fact, which people believe, but actually it gets released in the system because there's heaps of adrenaline in there. And the cortisol is actually helping, I think, harmonize or balance to downregulate. So adrenaline goes into the system to tell us to wake up, and then the cortisol then follows through to kind of like help us settle down. But for some reason, I don't actually know why, but we just talk about cortisol more than we do than adrenaline. So anyway, beside the point, we need something to help support those adrenal glands. And so I take a couple of supplements that are based on Chinese medicine and Indian Ayurvedic wisdom, and so which is just herbs essentially. They're just like more of an Eastern philosophy based herb, and a lot of naturopaths use these and recommend them. And so I basically take a supplement that's got all three of these, but 3 adaptogenic herbs, and adaptogens help your body regulate things. In this instance, it's cortisol. So ashwagandha, rhodiola, and schisandra berries. And so they're the 3. I take a supplement, it's got all 3 of those in it, and then it's got some turmeric in there as well, which is just a natural anti-inflammatory. So that's what I'd be recommending in terms of supplementation for amber light strategies. anything that will help a person calm down is essentially what an amber light strategy is.
Yep.
Anything that will just serve you or your emotional self in feeling fulfilled, relaxed, and nurtured so you can transition into sleep. Moving on to red light strategies now. The red light strategies would be anything to ensure that you don't wake up. So pitch black room is the first one. You want to make sure all the curtains are off. You want to make sure there's like literally no light. There's been plenty of studies to show that to the nth degree, even, you know, your standby light on your TV or your standby light on your laptop, that actually still interferes with your sleep cycles. And not obviously to a huge amount, but it still registers a response. So having that intention that you deliberately want to have the best sleep that you have, and by choosing to cover up all these bits of light, that'll even psychologically help your body with the placebo effect and getting to a deeper sleep as well, which has a massive, powerful effect. I'm a huge fan of placebo because of that. So pitch black rooms, finding strategies to ensure that you aren't disturbed by noise. And so not everyone likes this, but sleeping with earplugs, I don't actually do it, but I have earplugs handy just in case. Like, for example, I was staying at an Airbnb with some mates. We had a house down south, and the dude was a shocking snorer, like a terrible snorer.
I fucking hate that shit.
Yeah, and I don't mind when people snore because that's them, you know, like that's a reflection of their health or something that's wrong with their body. So, you know, I see it more from a state of empathy, because I'm like, well, I'd rather have to listen to them rather than be them. You know what I mean? Because that's you can't escape snoring until you fix that shit. So
yeah, and many don't actually know that they have it.
Yeah, a lot of them don't know they do it. Yeah, exactly right. So, but anyway, I just chucked some earplugs in, and I was like back asleep, and I was all sweet, no issues there. So. Just in case, like, you could be exposed to that. My neighbors recently got a puppy, and that thing, I love puppies, but I have definitely thought about getting a gun license, because that thing just barks and barks and barks.
Yeah.
And then Maggie's her name, and I figured out her name, and then she's like, it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like opening the window. I'm like, Maggie, shut up. And then Maggie like looks, and she doesn't even know who I am. And she starts barking at me, and I'm like, oh no, what have I done? I've stirred the pot. So, but luckily, like, Maggie's on the side of where my ensuite is. So I now, because I like to leave my ensuite bathroom open. I like to have a small amount of airflow. I raised myself. I grew up always having the window open. I could never sleep in a room without the window open, as a matter of fact. And just because I lived in a place called Darlington in the Perth Hills, and it was just like, I'm just all about that fresh air. I just love airflow. But now that I live a little bit closer into the CBD now, the air, again, is nowhere near as fresh, but I notice more of the actual external noise coming, especially because this fucking, can I swear?
Yeah.
Because this fucking dog's just barking all night as well. So now I've got the window shut. I've got my ensuite, my what do you call it? My walk-in wardrobe, because I have to walk through the wardrobe. So I've got this double door shut just to ensure I can't get this dog making noises. So closing windows if you can, so minimizing light, minimizing noise, ensuring ways that there's no noise exposure to wake you up at nighttime, and having a very intentional sleep environment. So an intentional sleep environment would be a clean room, an organized room, so that classic healthy mind, healthy room, healthy space, everything's clean and organized, and that really helps the psychology of the mind. And then also having really good bed sheets. Like really, really good bed sheets is a really nice one too. You want to get in your bed. You want to cuddle your pillows. You want to snuggle into your blankets. And so to kind of slither into your bed sheets and really get up nice and cozy, like, that's the shit. That's the stuff that, if you want to get into your bed, you're gonna have the best sleep. You're gonna slip into those deep phases. You're gonna roll in and out, and you're gonna roll back out of bed, because it's just it's so nice to be. That can be challenging to get out, obviously, but if you can get into your sheets and have nice sheets, try and avoid buying cheap sheets as well, because that's obviously just slave labor sheets anyway. But having nice quality bed sheets, and I'm actually as I was changing my sheets last night, I'm like, I know what I'm going to be asking my parents or my housemates for Christmas. I'm like, oh, I reckon I'm due for some new bed sheets, guys. That's actually what I'm going to be asking for, because also I actually don't know where the best sheets are and stuff. And I spent like like $300-400 on 2 pairs of sheets. It was like $600 worth of sheets that I got from a mate who worked at like bed shed or something like that. And but they're like after like 24 months of use, they've gone a bit like, they're a bit weathered, you know. Like I thought they would have lasted longer, and so I'm definitely due for new sheets anyway. But they were really nice sheets at the time. So anyway, they're your red strategies to make sure that you stay asleep. And then your green light is just anything that's the go. Yeah. So I talked about those 4 aspects of the human: the emotional, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. At nighttime, it's ways to restore those 4 aspects. At night, in the morning, it's ways to stimulate those 4 aspects. How can I stimulate myself physically? You can jump up and down. You can do some yoga. You can do some stretching. When I say yoga, I would be encouraging more of like a vinyasa flow, a more energizing, a more flowy movement-based yoga practice. And then at nighttime, more of like an Ashtanga or like is it yin? A yin yoga or a yang? No, I think it's a yin yoga. I think that's the more feminine one. Just a more restorative style yoga. And then, yes, in the morning, it's finding ways you can do lymphatic stimulation, which is to stimulate the lymphatic system, it's essentially just encouraging circulation, which is just jumping up and down. You can like beat your chest and stuff, and you can slap your legs and your muscles just to kind of get everything moving. Anyone who follows me on Instagram knows I'm like 900 days straight into my cold shower streak. So I have 3-minute cold showers every single day. And also a side note on the cold showers, it's like, wow, there's so many cold showers, but they are a little bit ineffective now because I've been doing so many. They're not like, they definitely wake me up. Don't get me wrong, 100% wake me up, but I'm so adapted to them. Like that I kind of want to do them less now because I'm so used to doing the cold showers. I'm a bit over them, but I've built a bit of a core following of people on Instagram that just love me for my cold showers. So I'm like, oh, time to go again. Day number 917 or whatever I'm up to.
I actually remember you were the guy who pushed me to start doing them myself.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's good to know.
So thank you for that. And also after that, I did the course with Wim Hof as well.
Oh, you did. Yeah, you did.
And I love it. I just am conscious that if I don't have a good night's sleep, because what I found for me is stress.
Yes.
Really affects my sleep and other factors. I find that I cannot do properly or a really enjoyable cold shower when I feel like I'm oxygen deprived.
Yes.
That's 100%. Plus, especially when you're in the bathroom and you have to close the door, the idea that there is not this, you're not in the open space and there is no the tree that gives you oxygen. Yeah. It really closes me. Like gotta go for a run and get the oxygen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's it's funny you say that. I think we'll get back into it when we start talking about stress. But just to touch on that now, when we are more, I should say when we are more stressed. When we are less recovered, our baseline stress level is higher. Yeah. And so our body is kind of on this scale of essentially stressed to not stressed. And we kind of, when we wake up and when we wake up restored, we start in the not stressed scale. And so think of the scale like a temperature scale. We're kind of moving up and down that scale at all times during the day. And so when you expose yourself to cold water, you will then shoot into that super stress stage. But then when you walk out, you'll be able to bring yourself back down. And so if you walk from one room to another room, there's a temperature change, there is an information change, there's a lighting change, there's a noise change. And when you transition from environment to environment to environment, your body is sliding up and down that stress to not stress scale, because every time it's being forced to adapt to something, that actually pushes it into further into the stressed phase of the scale, because that's just when it's adapting, when it's kind of, because it's less stable, because shit's just changed and it's got to refigure out the environment. Oh, okay, this is the temperature, this is the lighting scenario, these are the people in the room, this is my threat level, these are my danger levels. And it's like, okay, boom, 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 boom. All right, I'm safe. Cool. And then it relaxes again. But when you're less recovered, the body has a harder time negotiating with the temperature and negotiating.
It just goes there straight away and it feels like so overwhelming, and I'm not enjoying it anymore.
Exactly right.
And I find I really enjoyed cold showers when I'm in the best.
100% right. You are 100% right. And so that's another reason why I'm a bit a bit over the cold showers, but I'm like, I'm going to get to the 1,000. That's the most important thing. Get to my 1,000 cold showers. Like, I've done this for 3 years now. I might as well do it. Like, I have missed days, but I've paused the streak because I've been camping or hiking when I actually don't have a shower. So those days I still kind of stand out in the cold because I'm as long as I'm still giving my body that stimulation. However, because I actually track this on my habit tracker, I'm still on a I think I'm at 917 day like streak of 3 minute cold showers. But the last final note on that, when I'm not as rested, the showers feel colder. Yeah. And mentally I'm less prepared for it. I look at the cold shower and I'm like, oh, damn it, Instagram. Like, why did I do this for all of you people? You know, I'm like, doing it for you. I'm not doing it for me, because it's actually setting me further back by committing to this cold shower. But it's contrary to that, it's actually great character building, because it's taught me a lot about how resilient and consistent I can be at something. But moving on from the cold showers and discussing those green light strategies, any sort of cold exposure is a great idea. So I tell clients just to splash some water on their flat face, or just get a like a Chuck's wiper, or like not a napkin, like a what's a cloth napkin, like a tea towel, like a whatever you call it, like a microfiber towel, whatever, and then just soak it in cold water and then just whack it on your face, or like put it over your neck, just so you kind of get that, like it's about committing to the moment that cold water or the cold something hits your face. It's like, I'm up. I am committed to being up, and I'm committed to not going back to bed. So going back to green strategies is charging your phone away from your bed, because then you have to physically get out of bed in order to grab your phone. And I've done it. I've still gone straight back into bed and be like, screw that, I'm going back into bed. I'm still a human, but for a lot of people, and this is probably most people listening to this podcast, I'm pointing down the camera, I'm looking at you because this is going to be you. You grab your phone first thing in the morning and you lay in bed and you just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. And this is also another thing why I'm also a bit like salty at my own cold showers, because people then go on Instagram to check if I've done my cold shower. And I always do my cold shower first thing in the morning. So it's somewhere between 4 and 6 in the morning usually that I've done it. And I see within minutes of posting that, there's like 20, 30, 40, 50 people that have started viewing my story. And I haven't even I've just got out of the shower. I'm still drying myself. I've just posted it on my Instagram, and then all these people are viewing. I'm like, you're still in bed. Don't do this, guys. Come on, and they're still doing it. And I've actually had a lot of clients when I'm on their phone, because we use an app at the gym, and I'm showing them how to use the app. And I try and turn it sideways, and they've got their phone lock on. And I'm like, do you have your phone screen locked because you've been laying in your bed sideways, like laying on your pillow sideways? And they're like, how'd you know? And I'm like, why else would you have your lock on? Like, the only time you put your phone sideways,
it's because you're sleeping.
It's just you're on your phone sideways when you're lying down, and you shouldn't be on it. So
unless you go around.
It really gets me. I'm like, come on, guys, like we need to hold ourselves to a better standard here. So, anything. But pretty much my number one thing is going for a morning walk. Going for a morning walk is my number one thing, because it actually satisfies a human on all four of those aspects of the body. Mentally, there's when they call it forward ambulation, which is just walking forward. The body. I actually just learned this recently off Andrew Huberman. He's got a great podcast, by the way. But as we pass through an environment, it's the equivalent of pouring water down through a hose to kind of flush the hose. It clears, you're running fluid through it. And so as we walk through, we're walking through information. We're walking through light. We're walking through our surroundings, and we're walking through noise. We're passing noise, if that makes sense, because we're walking and we're moving down the street. And what that does, it passes information through the mind and through the senses, and it helps promote the wakefulness. It helps to wake the brain up, because then it has to process those things, and then it's ready to. It's like you've run your engine for the morning. So a morning walk is really good on the neurological aspect. It's just really good to have your 5 to 10 minutes to yourself. It gets you moving. It gets the heart pumping. It gets the lungs pushing air through the system without full overexertion. When you're outside, there's plenty of sun exposure to be had as well, so your body gets that light, it receives all of that information. And then I tell someone to chuck some earphones in and listen to some good nutrition. So when I say good nutrition, we put good food into our bodies, but why don't we put good nutrition into our minds? And so for some people, that's listening to music. Listening to music is you listen to your favorite music, and whatever you feel like, that gets the body going. That's putting some vibrations through the body, which is really nice. Or listen to a podcast, or even some motivational shit. One of my clients is obsessed with bodybuilding motivational videos, and although I'm a bit like, be careful because these guys are like just massive roid heads, just like jamming testosterone into their veins and stuff. But you know, that's what excites him, and you have to work with what people value. And so, but he's, you know, I'd rather him watching like motivation videos all morning rather than just like joking his cock, just fucking watching porn or whatever, or just like watching some stupid Netflix show that's not nourishing for him. You know what I mean? So, getting good information into the body to help stimulate it and liven you up and stimulate your personality and your character. So, finding ways for stimulation, and that goes to, you can have a coffee. I don't mind people having coffee in the morning, just not too many. Like, don't have like 5 coffees a day. Like, cap your coffees at 1 a day. And also going back to an amber light strategy and a red light strategy is no caffeine after 12 p.m. We used to say 3, but people were abusing it, so we brought it back down to 12. So no caffeine after lunch, because caffeine just takes a while for the body to process. And so, you know, caffeine's got a half-life of 8 hours. I actually thought it was 4, and then I found out it was 8, and I'm like, oh, there we go, that's why. But what that means is if you have a 200 milligram like caffeine hit, which is what you'd have in a single coffee, if you're having pre-workout or something like that, you're looking at about the 250 to 300 milligram caffeine hit. Most people have pre-workouts at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you're having a 200 milligram coffee at lunchtime, that means by 8 p.m., because that 8-hour half-life, 8 hours later, 8 p.m., there is 100 milligrams still in your system. So still half of that coffee's caffeine is still in the system. And then in another 8 hours, which is going to be 4 a.m., there's still 50 milligrams in your system. And so although people are like, but I can drink a whole coffee and go straight to bed. So could I. I could do that as well. But the body is still processing the caffeine, and that will affect the deeper sleep cycles. So although you can physically get to sleep, you may not actually get into your deeper sleep cycles. And so making sure that in the morning, if you want to have your caffeine or you haven't have your coffee, go for it, but just don't have any coffee after 12, because caffeine actually really does help stimulate that cortisol and the adrenaline running through the system. And that's what getting the body exposed to sunlight is. So as a recap, amber light strategies are things like finding ways to nurture and restore yourself, breathwork, journaling, meditation, planning the day before, writing all of your thoughts down, having a lavender tea, doing some yoga, having a hot bath, having a hot shower, reading a book, maybe watching some fun stuff or having a cuddle with your partner, just to really, really feel calm, relaxed, nourished, restored, and satisfied with your day. That's an amber light strategy, because that's going to help you wind down into your sleep. Your red light strategies are strategies that are going to help you stay asleep, which is minimizing like pitch black room, shuttle your windows so you can't have any stupid neighbors' dogs barking at you, no external noise, using earplugs if you need to, and having some beautiful like bed sheets as well, like just a really super comfortable bed and an organized room that's going to really help people stay asleep. And then when they wake up in the morning, is your green light strategies, your go activities, anything to just be like go, 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 go. Walking, running, exercise, yoga, breath work, visualization, I missed that one, and visualizing your future or visualizing your day, anything that will really excite you, inspire you, putting good nutrition into your body, good nourishment, mental things into your mind, going for walks, anything that really gets you uplifted, energized, music, listen to some Tony Robbins or something, you know, like really gets yourself going, your motivational stuff. That's all your green light activities, so you can really like staunch your day and get the most out of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, appreciate that. That was good. I'm going to have a little sip of my smoothie now.
Do you know what the main downsides of using tap water are? Many people say that their tap water smells just like the swimming pool water, sometimes worse than that. Dry skin as well as itchiness after showering, it's real. Some see hair dryness and have to deal with hair loss more than usual. What about dandruff? Blech. Breathing in chlorine while having a nice steamy shower sometimes can worsen the symptoms of your asthma and eczema, and those are just a few of the harmful contaminants contained in tap water. Drinking tap water potentially exposes you to heavy metals that your body may absorb and store for life. Worry no more, we have the perfect water filters for you. Search weeup.com.au. Weeup is spelled W-E-E-U-P, and you can also find us on social media at weeup.au or Weeup Filtering Beyond Water. Just remember, if you don't have a water filter, your body is one. Now, back to this amazing podcast. So let's say that, a person is listening to this podcast and he knows that he gets everything you've said right. But he's a very stressed person.
Yes.
What I found in my own personal life, I remember when I was a kid, bro, sleeping wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
Except for my mom waking me up in the most unloving ways, I believe. So in Italy, we have Rolex shutters, like everyone has them.
Oh, yeah.
So everyone is sleeping, if they want, in a very, very dark room. Which was a thing that I find it's a bit challenging here in Australia. It's not really a thing. If you go in any buildings, they have like those things that, they make it dark enough, but still it's not that dark.
Yeah.
But what I found is that when I grew up, I moved to Australia and life it's a little bit more challenging. My sleep since then hasn't been as good. So I think stress is definitely a factor when it comes to that. And what's stress exactly? How would you define stress?
Yeah, great. We can go two ways with this because I really want to talk about this like parasympathetic and sympathetic scale. But based on the question, I might go a slightly different different direction, if I may, and talk about. You said if someone's doing all these strategies with their sleep and they're doing all the physical things, they're putting the routines in, they're doing all this stuff, they're eating the good food, they're exercising in the morning, but then they still can't get to sleep or they still can't relax, then it means that they've satisfied all of the mechanical aspects of the body, but then inside the head, the mind can still perceive a thing called stress. And stress is not a thing called a perceived threat, but a perceived threat is stimulated by stress. So stress comes from the nervous system. And so if we consider the way the human body is structured, right, I think I'm actually going to answer both of those things that I just mentioned anyway. But we have our brain, right? So if you're just listening to this in audio, guys, just visualize we're talking about a human body right now. And so I'm pointing to my head right now, my skull, and inside the skull is the brain. And then kind of plugged into the brain are our ears, our nose, our mouth, our eyes. They kind of suck in all that information that I was talking about, that the ears will hear things, the eyes will see things, the nose will smell things, and the mouth will taste things. And our skin will also notice the temperature changes as well. And so there is the brain that is the computer system, and then these cables will run from the skin, and they'll run from the eyes, and they'll run from the ears, and they will receive that information like it's like a little sensor, like a temperature sensor, or a light gauge, and it takes on that information and then it takes it into the brain, and then the brain will then gather all that data and go, okay, based on this and these colors that I've just been told by the eyes and the noise that's been that I'm hearing, the brain will then construct an image or a scenario, and then it will send that down our neck. So we should have heard by now there's a thing called the brainstem. So the brain is this kind of like globular, bubbly little like funny looking wormy little thing, and then at the bottom of it there's like this like a tail, like a tree trunk that comes out like the bottom back center of it, and it drops directly down. And so that's our brainstem, and then that will travel basically down our neck and through our spine, and that's what people may have heard of their spinal cord. And then there's, based off that tree stem, that branch, that trunk, then there's all these other like micro cables that kind of shoot off, like tree roots, for example. So we probably use the analogy of a tree, like the big, like the broccoli top of the tree, and then there's the trunk, and then there's the roots that spread out. And so the brain's at the top, the primary stem comes out the base of that, and then it just disperses into all these little cables that go to our fingertips, to our toes, to all of the organs, to all of our heart, our lungs, our skin, every single muscle. And what it does, it it sends information, it sends instructions and signals from the brain to those working parts of the body. But then those working parts of the body will then also send information back to the brain as well. And so the brain is constantly sending and receiving information via this cable system. And so this is essentially called our central nervous system. And our central nervous system is the circuitry, the cabling, the electrical cabling that actually it basically operates our whole entire body. So listeners, you can now visualize what the nervous system is. We can now visualize what the brain is doing. And so we have two aspects of this. We have different aspects of this nervous system. So I've just described our central nervous system. But then in order for you to be listening to this podcast, in order for me to be speaking down this microphone, I need to be alive. I need to literally not be dead. Because if I was dead, then I'd be dead, right? And so in order to be alive, in order for Nick to be sitting opposite to me, to be listening and communicating, in order for this whole entire experience that is happening, we need to be breathing right now. We need to be pumping that oxygen that we're inhaling through the lungs into the veins. Once into the veins, we then need to get the heart pumping to then push that oxygen through into the working muscles. Right now we're sitting, so most of my oxygen is going more towards the parts of my body that are helping me talk and think, so I can express this information and express myself through this microphone. When I say you, the listener, you're probably going to be getting a lot more blood flow to your ears, and you might be driving or you might be running while you're listening to this podcast as well. And so your body will be diverting lots of blood flow to the muscles into your legs and arms if you're running, into your heart as well to pump that blood around. And if you are moving like that, then your body's going to need to be sending a lot more nutrients to those muscles as well. And so you're also listening to this podcast, which means your brain's going to need a lot of nutrients and blood flow to be able to digest this information. So if you had to deliberately do that, you'd be fucked. You wouldn't be. It's too hard for all of us to do that. Let alone, as I mentioned, we walk in and out of different rooms. The temperature is going to change. The noise is going to change. So as I mentioned earlier, there's so much information that we're constantly receiving. If we would have had to think about that, our society would be going nowhere because it's so overwhelming for a human to deal with all of that information. So what happens is the nervous system looks after that by a division of that called the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls or dictates or manages all of the essential Homo sapien functions of the human body. The autonomic nervous system basically keeps us alive. If you walk into your car, you turn the engine on, and then you walk off, and the car's just like blah, 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 just idling, it's just doing stuff in order to be on. Right now, our bodies are just doing stuff in order to be on. So that's all managed by our subconscious. It's all managed by the autonomic nervous system, so that we don't have to think about that ourselves. So what's going to happen if we remember that I talked about our brain is receiving all of this information, and it's coming in from the eyes, it's coming in from the ears, and it's constructing this image inside our mind to tell our body what our environment is like, what's happening around us, what's happening in front of us, what's happening behind us, what's happening all the way over in the distance. Our brain is telling us what's happening via the eyes, via the senses, right? And then it constructs that imagery and then sends it down to the body. And so right now, Nick and we're sitting in a podcast studio, super cozy, like it's cold outside. I had a jacket on before, but now I'm in a t-shirt because it's nice and warm in here. It's nice and insulated. So my body tells me that I'm safe. My body knows that I am safe. And so because I'm safe, I can relax. I can relax. I am a little bit, I can feel that low level of anxiety, but that's just partially because I'm excited, but B, because I'm actually on a podcast right now. And so like things are being recorded and I know this is going to go out to the internet and all that kind of stuff. So I have that within me. I can feel that. But as a general rule of thumb, I know that I'm safe right now. If you're listening to this podcast in a vehicle, you will probably feel safe. However, there's a low level of anxiety because you're in a moving vehicle traveling at 60, 70, 80 Ks an hour, 100 Ks an hour. You might be driving down the highway. And so the reason that low level of anxiety is sitting there is because the mind based on the information it's been receiving from the outside world, the mind is then telling the body that there is a threat nearby or there is some sort of danger. If it was pure safety, you'd be purely relaxed. And so when you're purely relaxed, the nervous system that plugs into the heart would be like, hey man, we can chill, and the heart rate will drop. If the heart rate drops, then the lung pressure will drop. The breath rate will relax. The overall tension around the neck, the spine, the body, the lungs, that will relax, you know? When you're slithering into your warm bed, you've locked all the doors, you're with your partner, the dog is sleeping and calm, and you know that there's no one's nervous at all. You've been fed, it's nice and warm. You're in a sense of pure safety. And so the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, tells everything to calm down because it's all sweet, we're nice and safe. But if an intruder then came through the door like boom, 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 I busted down, or you heard a noise and you'd be like, but the doors are locked, what the fuck's that noise? Then all of a sudden, like, the eyes will start to dilate, the pupils will dilate, and that's the nervous system saying, let more light in. We need to see if there's a threat here. The ears will go tingly because the ears are like, we need to fucking hear some shit right now. Is there someone in this house? And then the heart rate will increase because it's like, do we need to start pumping blood to my fist so I can knock someone the fuck out of my house? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the brain goes into like long-term thinking. It's like, where did I put my weapons? Do I have a club? Do I have a baseball bat? And then the brain starts computing like, am I naked? Where's my underwear? Do I need to put some shoes on? Like, what's going on? And so all of these, the body will start responding to that environment, and that is the autonomic nervous system transitioning from that pure sense of safety and relaxation, and it's working its way up that scale, and it's telling the body to prepare for fight or flight. Fight or flight is the most common term we've known for stress, and so the body will start releasing adrenaline, it'll start releasing cortisol, it'll start to increase the heart rate, it'll start to, like I said, open those pupils, it will start to transition to long-term thinking and long vision, long-sightedness, should I say, so that it can look for threats, it can look for exits, it can look for, it can think for its, it can go back into its brain and be like, okay, it's like digging through your files, like, okay, where's my emergency processes, where's my, how do I fight again? How do I wrestle? Like, have I been in this stressful situation before? And it starts processing all that. And the next thing you know, you're up-regulated. The body is excited. The body, like, you could be mid-sex and your erection is gone. There's no blood flow going to the penis anymore. It's going straight back to the quads. It's going to the legs. Like, we got to fuck shit up right now. And so the body's like, let's go. And so that is a state of fight or flight or stress or anxiety, or it could just be pure excitement. Going to like a festival and being in a mosh pit or something, that's fun, but that's still stressful. You could be at the gym like, we're going to fucking hit some PBs. That there is actually pure stress, because when we're stressed, we are stronger, we're faster, we're more responsive. But either way, the heart rate is high, the muscular tension is high, the digestion will go down because the body doesn't need to digest any food. All it needs to do is tell the liver to pump heaps of glucose, that's blood sugar. It pumps heaps of glucose into the system to then send it to the muscles, so the muscles can use it for energy. Blood glucose or sugar is like that kind of the energy compound that the muscles need to do work. And so work would be lift, punch, run, climb, jump, whatever. And so if there is information coming from the outside world into the brain and then telling the body that we are unsafe, the body will then go, fuck, all right, we're in fight or flight. Let's roll there. And it's not black or white. It's not on or off. It's like a temperature scale. Like I said, you'll be more sympathetic, which is stressed. You'll be more fight or flight. You can then be like extremely stressed, which is like when the body gets to a point of shutdown, which is like super dangerous. Or you could be on the other end of the scale and sliding back down. And that's what I mentioned earlier, how we're adapting to stress. The body's just sliding up and down that scale at all, like on a moment by moment basis. The body is constantly sliding and up and down and fluctuating as it transitions from environment to environment, moment by moment. But this is the key point that I wanted to mention before. I mentioned that when we're in that sense of safety, the body goes into rest and digest. It's nice and calm, and that's where it thrives. When it's feeling unsafe, it transitions into fight or flight, and it will be in that sense of I'm unsafe, I need to protect myself. The signaling that tells us to transition from both of those phases comes from the brain. The brain, however, the mind, will construct that imagery and send it to the body. The body doesn't know the difference between the threat that's been created inside the mind than the threat that the mind is actually perceiving through the senses. And so going all the way back to that original question where you said, this person has been doing the amber strategies, they're sleeping in a nice warm bed at night time, and then they're going to wake up and do their green strategies, they're eating healthy and they're training really well, and they're integrating all these different strategies to just really have really great well-being, but they still can't get to sleep, and then they still can't manage that stress. That could very likely mean that although they've done the things externally with their body and their environment in regards to their routines and their lifestyle that they're living, if they're then still dealing with the stress, it's very likely meaning that their nervous system or their mind is still stuck in a loop with some sort of issue or some sort of fear or some sort of image or some sort of story that's telling the nervous system that it's unsafe. It's telling the body that it's unsafe, even though the information on the outside is unreal. And so let me paint a picture for all you readers or listeners out here. Nick and I were in this podcast room, and then let's just say, like, I turned around and there was like a big snake. I saw an Instagram thing this morning, and there's this like boa constrictor just like crawled in this lady's room. And it's super scary. And so I turned around and I saw a snake. I'd be, oh, fuck. I'd literally scare myself. I'd be super frightened, and I'd literally jump. And oh my God, there's a snake! Like I would jump into alert mode, right? And so my body would freak out. My body would go into fight or flight, and I would have to deal with that threat, right? But let's say that never happened, right? Let's say it's just a normal day in the podcast studio, and we're all sweet. But then I would then go home, and then I would go to sleep, and I'm having a sleep, and then in my dream, I was back in the podcast studio. But then all of a sudden, there was something different about the podcast studio because I wasn't in a dream, as a matter of fact. I'm in a nightmare. And so now I'm in this nightmare. I turn around and there's a snake. And then I'm like, oh my God. And then I try and jump up. But then in dreams, how like you can't always control yourself and stuff. And I have these issues like heaps of times I can't run and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God.
It's fucking horrible. It should be illegal.
I hate those dreams, man. I hate them. I'm like, I can't run now. And I'm like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, I'm the size of the snake. And then the snake's the size of Josh. And I'm like, oh no, what's going on?
It's getting worse.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden the walls go on fire and stuff. And it's just chaos, right? It's complete chaos. And then just like, I wake up and I'm in my bed. I'm sweating, my heart's like pounding. And so that scenario is that inside the dream that it was a pure nightmare, I was so scared and I was so freaked out that my body's heart rate still picked up. Even though I was laying in my cozy bed, my fairy lights were off, it was all sweet, my doors are locked, I'm safe, I live upstairs and it's all sweet. But in my dream, that was going on in my mind and my heart rate was booming, my body temperature increased, I was sweating, I was shaking, I was full of adrenaline. And so that is the example of how the nervous system will respond to imagery in the mind, but it doesn't know what's actually happening in the real world. And that's why it's really important for us as human beings to really value our mental health and really value our well-being. And it's not really a place for me to start offering advice because this is not where I'm no longer a professional in. But as humans, we have issues and we have our own traumas, our trials, our tribulations, our issues, our fears, the things that scare us, and they fuck us up. They literally fuck us up. And if we don't address these things, they will continue to fuck us up. And if we ignore the fact that they're fucking us up, they'll fuck us up even more because the body the body is still responding to the imagery in the mind. And so if we're just trying to ignore it with our conscious mind and try and persevere and move on with our life without addressing our own bullshit, then that's going to keep recurring and occurring and recurring and occurring within the mind. And if it's not happening in our real life, then it's going to come back to us in our dreams. I literally have a client right now. He's like, I've got sleep apnea and all this kind of stuff. And I was just quizzing and I was like, what the fuck's going on? And I was just like, I kind of had this sense that something's not right. Like I was like, I'm missing something here. I'm like, when did the sleep apnea happen? And he's just like, about 14. I'm like, did you have anything that fucked you up when you were like a kid? And he was like, oh yeah, big time. And then we both paused and I looked at him and then he looked at me and was just like, about the same time that the sleep apnea happened. I'm like, there you fucking go. Yeah. I was like, we need to address this, bro. I can't. This is not my space, but we need to address this. As your coach, you got to deal with your shit, man. And so I didn't go down the rabbit hole of questioning about what it was. I left the space open for him to share that with me. But I then started showing him a bunch of videos on breath work, on PTSD, there's a really cool video on YouTube, and it's called, if you want to YouTube this, guys, it's called Polar Bear Releasing Trauma. And so it's a really old video, and it's these guys, they're flying in a helicopter, they're chasing a polar bear, and they shoot it, they tranquilize it, and then the guys, I think they just tagged it or did whatever they wanted with it. But then they were explaining, they had the polar bear laying on the ground, and they were like, okay, as the polar bear is like starting to come to, it'll start shaking. And he's literally like saying what's about to be happening, and then the polar bear does it like it's a script. And the polar bear it's unconscious still, but it's just it's like shaking and shaking. It's on its side. It's like yeah, and it's like hyperventilating. And what he's saying is like because the polar bear's body is so full of cortisol and adrenaline, all these stress hormones and this biochemistry, it was because it literally just been shocked by a tranquilizer. Just saw this, like, imagine being a polar bear and seeing a helicopter, be like, what the fuck is that? You know, like the literal equivalent of what we fear is an alien invasion, just like a bunch of some random loud thing like coming down, and these humans just shooting it. And then what it does, it was like, he's like, it'll keep shaking, and in a moment it would take one big inhale and a big gasp, and it literally did that. It was like shake, and then it goes and there's like these really big exhales, and it's like it's really wanting to expel that gas that's been created from all the heat from it shaking. Yeah. And in the equivalent of like, if you imagine having like too much coffee and the body's shaking, the body's got too much chemicals in it, and it's the shaking is it trying to getting it out. That's why we cough, why we sneeze, why we spew, why we have diarrhea, why we sweat. That's the body is trying to push the shit out of it. That's what happens when we get sick. So the polar bear shakes up and down, and then it eventually calms down. And then I went down the rabbit hole, and I was watching a bunch of videos of all the different animals, and every animal has a means of releasing the chemicals that when it's like kind of overdoses on its own chemicals. And I saw videos of like dogs shaking and tremoring and from excitement. You know when dogs like shake when they get excited? They're just like, oh, fuck, you know, because they literally can't contain the energy in it, so it has to go somewhere. And there's like zebras that have been chased by lions, and then once the lions have gone, there's heaps of zebras, and they're just like, they're kicking their legs out and stuff. They're literally shaking rapidly. It looks like a shiver, so to speak. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. But then I realized that as humans, we have the same nature within us. And so it took me into the route of realizing that because of the modern world that we live in and all of the societal values that we now hold, and it's unprofessional to cry, and it's unmanly to cry and all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean we should bring out crying into the workplace and stuff like that, but it does mean that we need to acknowledge that if there's pain inside the body, or we need to shake that out, we got to shake that shit out, because it just keeps coming back and keeps coming back. And I've listened to lots of therapists speak about trauma and PTSD, and And you don't have to go into breath work, but breath work is a fantastic way to stimulate the nervous system to actually then readdress these. And so you can basically get into a breath work practice, and it's lots of breathing. You basically hyper-oxygenate the body, right? You flood it with oxygen, and this is the same stuff that Wim Hof does, and getting the body being able to get back into those. You deliberately make yourself stressed so that you can be calm in that stress state, if that makes sense, and you can expose your body to cold. And so these same breath work practices that Wim Hof does to allow people to kind of walk in through Iceland in shorts and be calm in the face of stress is the same style of practice you can utilize for psychological healing. And the reason I'm a big advocate for breath work now is because as a mechanical guy who studies posture and figures out how to get people big and strong, I've realized now that the rib cage and the breath awareness is the foundation of posture, because when the ribs are locked up, they literally pull the spine forward, and then the spine's in what we call kyphosis. And so the breathing practices are the mobility drills to open the spine back up. And people are trying to get stronger shoulders, they're trying to get rid of their headaches. And I say this: you can't hang the coats until the coat hanger's standing up. Your head and your shoulders are the coats. The spine is the coat hanger. So even if people just want to feel better, and they just want to be stronger, or they just want to build a more toned body, or they want to get their six-pack and stuff, you can't do that until the ribs are back open, because that's the foundational part of the skeletal system, is getting that spine upright and getting those ribs open. And so that this work on the ribs has got me to getting my postural and my performance-based goals out of my triathletes, my own running, and just my baseline humans that I work with. But then I've also found it's helped me teach my clients how to regulate their stress levels and become more self-aware of their own body, as well as put them in a position when they can actually then build the foundation to address their own psychological triggers as well, that's forcing them into a psychological state of stress as well. So this rabbit hole I went down with breathing really helped me understand that breathing is, and that's why I put it in one of my stress pillars, is that breathing is the foundation, because it hits the self on so many different aspects and so many different layers. And breath awareness is the foundation for all of those things. And essentially, the breath is actually the foundation for healing, because the foundation of fixing your posture so that you can get rid of your shoulder bursitis if you got it. If you got hip problems, you can't get the hip working right until the spine's working right. And you can't get the spine working right until you get the ribs open. And you can't get the ribs open until you teach the body how to rebreathe. And so it's in every layer of what I've been talking about, how we have a mental aspect, we have an emotional aspect, we have a physical aspect, and we have a spiritual aspect. You can't unlock yourself until you've built a foundation around your breath. And I get super excited about it, because I'm like, this is the gift of life, motherfuckers. Like, no wonder we can't last 7 minutes without breathing unless we're fucking David Blaine, you know? The only people that can hold their breath for an extreme amount of time are people that practice deep breathing with the yogics, the yogic teachers, or the yogis, or the deep sea divers, which most of the deep sea divers actually just practice yoga and doing all these deep breathing practices, and all the cold exposure enthusiasts, they all practice the breathing as well, because the oxygen is the thing that we can. I always struggle to say this sentence. Oxygen is the thing that we need the most, that we can't last without. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah.
And water is next, I think.
Yeah. It's oxygen, water, and then food, and then probably sleep. Those four, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the breath is the most important thing. So to kind of, I went on this massive rant about about stress and all of that. But again, in summary, we have sympathetic and we have parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is a state of being calm. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. And then sympathetic is a state of being stressed. And so at all times we're always floating up and down this scale on a moment-by-moment basis, from parasympathetic down to sympathetic, and up and down and up and down. I should say up to sympathetic and then down to parasympathetic. We're fluctuating at all times. And so when we're in parasympathetic, that's when we can sleep. In sympathetic, we cannot. When we're in parasympathetic, we can burn fat, we can build muscle, we can repair our tendons, we can actually get aroused. We can't get aroused when we're in a stressful state because it's too intense. On a side note, this is for guys only. I think you might know this. Arousal occurs in parasympathetic whereas ejaculation occurs in sympathetic.
Yeah.
So if guys are listening to this and you want to last longer in bed, it's actually breathing drills that you learn by doing this, is that if you can learn to control your breath to stop you from going into sympathetic, into that stress state, then you can't ejaculate. And so use these breathing drills. So parasympathetic is all about being calm, relaxed, chill, and also the negative side effects of parasympathetic is being sad and depressed and lethargic. There's still negative states being parasympathetic. But then on the sympathetic scale, it's all about the excitable, alert, high threshold kind of stuff. And so we need to spend more of our life in parasympathetic, and we need to deliberately expose ourselves to sympathetic so that we can build resilience to stress. And that's why we deliberately train to then make ourselves stronger. We deliberately run faster to teach ourselves how to handle a higher aerobic load. We get into stressful states, into sympathetic with cold showers and exposure, to then teach ourselves that we can be safe in a stressful environment, so that we can be more resilient to just the daily stresses of life. Like if your boss is being a dick, or you get a letter from the government and you're like, it's a fucking speeding bill or something, like when you see these things, normally people freak out, but the more you learn to manage yourself in stressful scenarios and learn to be comfortable in a sympathetic state, the more you can hold composure. And so the more you can hold composure, the more you can live life on the edge, which is usually where the fun is, as a matter of fact. If you live life on the edge and do risky things, and growth doesn't really come in the comfort zone, but parasympathetic is the comfort zone. So we need to live this life where we are always aware of when we're stressed and know how to bring ourselves back down. And we also are aware of when to put ourselves into that stressful situation so that we can grow our own capacity and then drop ourselves back down in parasympathetic. And we need to be aware is that when we're in a sympathetic state, a lot of these times it can be a perceived threat. And so we need to be aware of what our perceived threats are, because then we're telling ourselves we're unsafe when in actual fact we are. And so when we are safe, we are our best selves. The brain functions better when we're in parasympathetic and when we're our best selves. And so the way we regulate that is through breathing, because parasympathetic is a relaxed state. It's associated with a low heart rate. Sympathetic is an excited state. It's a stimulated state, which is therefore recognized with a high heart rate. So I always teach people to pay attention to your breath awareness, your heart rate, and the tension around your body. And those three biomarkers will tell you, they will give you the information that you need to be aware of where your body is at. If you always check in with your body and you always check in with your heart rate, just pick one. If you just check in with your heart rate, you will always know whether you're in parasympathetic or sympathetic. And then the way that you manage your heart rate is through breath. And that's where it comes down to.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to share with you is that, for example, if I take my singing, right? And I find that my worst performances is where I'm totally in the sympathetic, because I'm like stressing about, I'm no longer thinking about what I'm doing. I'm thinking about what, the people that are listening to me, or the guy has a weird face. It's like, maybe he doesn't like what I'm doing, and doesn't appreciate it, or if he thinks like I shouldn't be doing it. And sometimes, and then, introducing meditation and relaxation and breathing, and obviously singing is a lot, if not more about breathing than anything else. It's not even the voice, like breathing is like the foundation. And I find that when I relax, my performance is so much better, because I'm actually concentrating only, and my attention is fully on what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
And so I know you were mentioning about, you were saying about being in a sympathetic position and learning to become comfortable in the sympathetic. What I found is I never find myself comfortable in the sympathetic. I have to learn to drop from the sympathetic in a stressful environment, if it makes sense. So I'm no longer here, even though the stress is the same, but I'm no longer here. I transition to the safe and parasympathetic, and then I perform better. So it's it's a tricky.
I will add on that, like, let's use the analogy of being in an ice bath, because that's a really good one to have. Is that because an ice bath is just extremely uncomfortable for anyone, and so there's no way to actually like be parasympathetic. Or, I shouldn't say that. Maybe it's possible, but you're not going to be really that like you'd be pretty crazy if you got an erection in an ice bath, right? If you were in an ice bath, it's super, super cold and the body is just constantly being exposed to that information. So the reason I say it's not impossible, because if we look at David Blaine like broke the world record by, then Wim Hof then ended up breaking the world record by
Which one?
For being being in direct contact with ice.
I think it was 50 minutes or 50 something.
Yeah.
For Wim Hof, I don't know about.
Yeah, Wim Hof would definitely have it, but David Blaine also did something pretty crazy. I think Wim Hof has the record though now. But both of those guys did a lot of work to try and get there,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
And so outside of those people who did outrageous amounts of work, for a normal person, being in an ice bath could be the equivalent of like standing on stage. Right, for a lot of people, the thought
Worse
of
sometimes.
Worse
For the normal person.
For most people, standing on stage and delivering a speech is just like the most terrifying thing. And so, both of those are whether it's on stage or in an ice bath, you're stepping into something that's really uncomfortable, right? And the feedback is constantly there that it's uncomfortable. So, especially in an ice bath, because it's going to be like freezing cold, and the body has to literally pull its blood flow into its core to protect its vital organs. You can still control your heart rate in both of those scenarios, and that will allow you to minimize the perceived threat. Because what I tell my coaches is that one of the best benefits of actual focusing on the breath is that it gives the mind a focal point, and what it does, it distracts the mind from whatever story is circulating in the head over and over and over and over again. What is actually happening is that even though you are in a sympathetic state, by just controlling the heart rate, you're then conserving energy. And so the body, you still are stressed, you still are in sympathetic, but managing that heart rate will allow you to conserve your energy. Because I'm aware of this because I'm now considered an endurance athlete. I'd more consider myself an endurance enthusiast, but with all the, if anyone doesn't know, I've done a couple of like half Ironmans, and I do a couple of marathons. I've got a marathon in a couple of weeks, and training for a 50K ultra marathon and stuff. So I do a lot of running, a lot of cycling, and not so much swimming anymore. But especially in running, you have to be aware of your heart rate zones. So you have like zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. And so zone 5 is basically a full max effort. And so no human can really spend that long in their max heart rate zone. They just fatigue so quickly. And so for me as an endurance athlete, when I do my long runs, for example, my long runs, which they're basically jogs, because I'm up to 30. My next run's going to be just shy of 40 Ks. And that's just going to be that's my casual Sunday stroll, is a 40K stroll. And so in order for me to achieve that, I need to basically run that in zone 2, which is like a 145, sub 150 beats a minute. And so I basically have to feel like I'm jogging so that I can just run for hours and hours and hours, because it's going to be just over a 3-hour run to get that 40K in, because I'm also doing trail running as well. So I'm just running through the bush. But when I start running, my heart rate's always like at like 170, 180, because I'm like, let's fucking go, let's do this.
At the beginning, I find that as well.
We all know, anyone who's done any of that exercise, like the fatigue just comes on so quickly. And it's like the more you spend in that high heart rate zone, in that zone 5, that zone 4, the more time you spend in there, the faster you burn out. And so learning to, understanding that if you want to be the king of the slow burn, you have to be able to control the breath to be able to drop into that heart rate. And so it's really important to spend time to know that it's important. I shouldn't say that. It's important to understand that it's very unsustainable to sit at a high heart rate. It's just physically not how we're designed to sit at that high heart rate for that long. And whether that's on stage or whether that's in an ice bath, you just burn out. That's have you ever heard of persistence hunting?
No, I can feel where you're going.
Persistence hunting, it's basically the ultra marathon version of hunting. So people go hunting with guns, or they go hunting with bows or spears or whatever. I think it might be like Namibia or something that they do it, but the deer, I think it's deer or the antelope or whatever, they don't have sweat glands, I believe. so they can't regulate their temperature or some shit like that. And so what these tribes people do,
Oh no, I know where it's going.
they just follow. They just follow for hours and hours. And persistence hunting is literally like they don't stab it or anything. They don't spear it. They don't chase it. They just run and they just follow. Let's pretend it's a deer. It might actually be a deer, but it might not be. So let's just call it a deer. They just chase the deer for like 5, 6, 7, 8, however long it takes for that deer to burn out. Yeah, it just burns out. And I think it does die, it collapses, and then maybe they snap its neck or stab in the neck or whatever. But they don't chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. They just follow it, and they're more of a crew of like master trackers, and they know that these animals, they can't regulate their stress, and they know they can only stay stressed for so long, because the moment that animal knows it's being hunted, it's instant in fight or flight. Its whole biochemistry will then change, and so they just chase and chase and chase and chase, and they pursue until the animal gives up and then just drops, and then they just walk over and there we go.
Yeah,
dinner's
and
ready.
I find this is what happens to people when they are constantly.
That is chronic stress to a T. And I see so many people fall victim to it, and that's a big aspect as to why we do what we do, and that's how we serve our clients, is really making them aware of how unsustainable they're living based on how they've been taught. And a lot of it is just being taught via osmosis. So no one deliberately taught them these things, but we just seem to have kind of rolled into a world where we just assume that it's normal to not sleep, and it's normal just to stay on our phones all night, and it's acceptable just to eat like shit, like eat fast food and plastic. And like I saw Red Rooster, and I'm like, Red Rooster's like, surely people just have stopped eating Red Rooster by now. And then they've just done they've redone their logos and stuff. There's a Red Rooster down the road from the gym, and there's all this stuff going on, and they've fully revamped. They're doing Red Rooster delivery and stuff now. I'm like, aren't you guys being wild? Like, surely people have realised now that you. Yeah. And maybe Red Rooster's not even the worst ones. Like, they're all bad, but maybe because Red Rooster just do like they just do like a normal roast chicken, which people probably just go, oh well, it's kind of healthy, you know. But
McDonald's,
oh man, it's like literal. It's literal plastic. Literal plastic. You know what? Fun fact: I haven't had McDonald's in. I can't remember how long, but let's just say it's a decade. It'll be somewhere between like. Yeah. Oh, actually, no, I lie. I went to China once. I was really sick when I was in China. This was like during the gym time, so it was probably like about 4 years ago. I flew to China 4 years ago to try and get some equipment from China, and I was like notoriously sick. I made some big mistakes getting it in there, and I was experimenting with I shouldn't say illegal drugs, but drugs that I shouldn't have had my hands on. It was modafinil. I don't know if you've heard of modafinil. There's a movie called Limitless with Bradley Cooper.
I've seen Limitless.
Yeah, you know, I think is it XCT or something, or like the movie's based off modafinil. Modafinil is like it's a prescription drug for narcolepsy, and narcolepsy is people that just like get tired and fall asleep randomly as well. And you can sometimes get it for ADD. So it's a stimulant, right? It's a wakefulness promoter, and so. In Silicon Valley, you know, where the tech giants are, Google, Facebook, all that stuff, apparently modafinil is huge there. So I was like ordering modafinil from India, and it just came straight in the post. Like these literal like prescription pills were just coming into my mailbox, and I was just popping these, and I managed to get my hands on some dexamphetamines as well. And I was just experimenting with these, and in the lead up, I was like super stressed leading up because I was like, I'm going to China, I got to get this shit sorted. And then like I flew to China. I'd never been to China, and I was like terrified of going to another country and all this kind of stuff. I'd traveled but never been to a third world country. And so I was like not sleeping. And then I was also like I was a full blown male stripper during that time as well. And so I was taking dexamphetamine and modafinil leading up to like the whole week leading up to the trip. I had the red eye flight on Saturday night, and so I had a strip show on the Friday night, and then I had 3 strip shows on the Saturday night on the way to the airport. And I was just like, I couldn't, because I wasn't sleeping, and I was like putting so much stimulants into my body started shutting down. And then by the time I got onto the plane, I had like full blown diarrhea, and I was like spewing and stuff, and I almost didn't get let into the country because
You're sick.
yeah, I got picked up on the temperature radars, and they sat me in this office and stuff, and I couldn't speak English, and like, yeah, like I was fine, but I really felt they were just like, I felt this look as like fucking Westerners. Like, I really felt unwelcome. I really did. I honestly, man, I felt super unwelcome, and I was sick the whole 5 days. I lost 5 kilos, and I had my belt on. I could fit my whole fist down my pants because my waistline was so loose. But anyway, the reason I share that story is quite funny because that's a pure example of why I know stress to the nth degree, because I put myself through so much doing stuff like that. But I actually went to McDonald's because it was the only thing that I knew. It was the only familiar, because like I was like, it was all like they literally had like chickens and rats and stuff on the side of the street.
It's like McDonald's or rats?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I can eat rat or not. So I'm just gonna, I was like, I'm just gonna go to McDonald's and I ate some cheeseburgers, and I was like, oh, like familiarity, like thank fuck. But other than that, I actually haven't had fast food. I haven't had any fast food since. I still get like I shouldn't say that. I still go to like burger joints and I'll get some burgers and fries and stuff, and because I'm a bit of a burger fan. But everything in moderation, right?
Yeah. What I find, I want to remind whoever is listening here, is that being chronically stressed is what makes most people feel like they are always tired. And that's for me, like I can see a normal day I have like a certain amount of energy. They can be like almost unlimited sometimes. And days that I'm very stressed, or I already know, oh, it's Friday. I know that Friday, Saturday for me is like big for singing. So I always am more tired during the weekend. And it's not because I'm doing more, it's because I'm stressing more. So the moment you understand that, the moment, everything changes. Yeah,
you're dead right. I really appreciate you raising that, because if we reflect that, what you just shared on the scale of parasympathetic to sympathetic, whether you're actually doing physical activity or not, if you are stressed, your heart rate is high. Whether you're actually, because you could be sitting down. This is a really interesting thing. Is I left it at home because I'm putting on charge, but you can see my watch tag. But I wear a Whoop, and if you don't know what a Whoop is, listeners, it's kind of like a fancy Fitbit. Essentially, it's a Fitbit for the higher end. It gives you really like some of the most advanced data tracking you can get your hands on, which is really cool for a fitness enthusiast like myself. But my Fitbit recognizes activity. Physical activity. So if I go for a run, my phone will just buzz and be like, your activity's been auto-detected. You've gone for this was your heart rate during your run. This is what you normally spend during this much activity. This is what your heart rate normally is. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Whoop. And I've been dealing with some personal issues as well over the last couple of months. And thank God I'm like really through them now, and I'm like back nice and sprightly. But during that time, that was and this is literally only like 2-3 months ago, when I was like really at my lowest that I felt in business, and super stressed out, super fatigued as well. And my Whoop actually registered that I had gone, like I got out the shower and I looked at my phone. It's at nighttime. My phone buzzed and it was like, your activity's been processed. And I was like, what do you mean my activity's been processed? I just had a fucking shower. And it's like, you just spent 12 minutes cycling. You spent 8 minutes. Oh no, sorry. You spent 12 minutes at 80% to 90% of your max heart rate. This is 8 minutes more than you normally spend during cycling. And I was like, I haven't fucking been on the bike in 2 weeks. Like I've only been running. I've been doing this ultra marathon training. And then I looked at my phone at the time, and what I was doing was I was just driving home. And I drive in silence most of the time. I was driving, but I was thinking about my problems, my issues. And that's why I was feeling so low, because I kind of like slipped into this hole where I was noticing so much around me that was wrong. There was issues in my personal life. There was issues like with my with the staff and the team, and there was like a few morale issues, and I kept paying attention to it. And in the big picture, it wasn't really that big of a deal, but I was just really unsatisfied with my external life. And so I was really assessing my environment, my life, who I was, how productive I was, and my training and my stress. And I was just so like, and I was dealing with like just loneliness as well, like deliberately dealing with my loneliness, because that's one of the things that is something that I need to work on as well. And so I was working on my personal stuff. I was paying attention to the gym and noticing morale was there. And I was like, morale in my heart was down. Morale in the office was down. I didn't feel clear on my vision with the business and myself. And it was really, really getting me down. And I was just constantly stewing on these problems over and over and over again. And I became so consumed by them that by the time I actually ended up, by the time I had spent probably 2 months in that headspace, I started getting these anxiety attacks. And so my Whoop, it happened twice where I registered these high intensity activities. I was just driving home. And the craziest thing is that I was having spikes 170, 175, 180 beats a minute during this window. And I was so focused in my head, driving home, thinking about my problems in pure silence that I could not feel my heart bursting through my chest. I couldn't feel it at all. So I was so stressed, I was completely unaware of how anxious my body was. And I've never had an anxiety attack like that. I've never had, so I actually ended up having 3 as a matter of fact. And that's when I was like, all right, I got to sort some shit out, And yeah, it was a crazy time.
Yeah, I can share moments like those.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I had, long story short, I had these moments of 2 or 3 panic attacks where I actually ran into the hospital.
Wow.
Because I was like, that's it,
Yeah,
and actually, when you were talking about the animals, in the previous story where they're shaking, one thing that happens to me all the time, I'm an animal myself, I start shaking. And I don't. Now that you mention it, it makes sense. But before I was like, what the fuck is wrong? What do I actually shake every time I get to the extreme levels? And it happened twice that I remember, probably 3 times.
Wow.
And 100% it's real.
Yeah, man, it's a real thing. And I think it's important that we accept that. We accept it, that it's a part of our nature, because we actually deny that. And by denying it,
it's worse.
Yeah, it stops us from, because all it is the body just needs to go through it. It just needs to shake it out, and then we're all sweet. It's just finding a way to shake. That's why it's good just to go into the gym or hit the boxing bag and actually just exert yourself. It's really good to have that expression or the avenue to express yourself. And so as long as we understand that that's a part of our nature and that's a part of being a Homo sapien, as I keep saying, then we're like, well, I'm a fucking human. People kind of judge themselves for wanting to express that, and it's a tough space for them, and that's where people get sick, man, and people get really, really sick. I really do believe that that's the foundation for serious illness and ailments such as cancer in the future as well, because
I think for everything.
Yeah, literally.
Just being sick in the mind, it reflects in the body, and it creates it. Most people are actually, for example, I used to be, and I'm not anymore as much of hypochondriac.
Yep.
But I personally have friends that are like that. And I feel sorry because I can't help them because they don't want to be helped.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
they don't even ask. But I can feel what it's like to be always stressed, and it's tiring as fuck. It's very tiring, and if you think about all the energy that goes into stressing, could have been energy they spend on actually, on the organs to,
exactly
do what they are meant to be doing.
Yeah, definitely. It's a matter of thrive or survive is what I basically summarize it. If you're either in thrive or you're in survive, and you can't really thrive if you're in survive.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is you just gotta, and these people, they just need to, it's hard because once you're there, it's a really deep hole, and if you don't have good people around you, it's hard to really recognize that, get the feedback, or get the support, or have the faith within yourself to know that you can pull yourself out of it. So
Can I ask you something about when you were in the car, or thinking about, your problems or whatever? Do you think was a passive thinking? Was that you initiating the thinking, or was is so much going on that actually the thinking just in a loop and you can get out of it?
It was actually both. It was
both.
Me deliberately driving in silence is because it gave me that I do that on purpose so that I can think about my problems. So I was deliberately choosing to think about my problems. But what was happening was that I spent, for some reason, I don't know why I did it, but I just got caught up, man, honestly. And I'll openly say, I was really struggling with pot smoking as well. And I was going through, I've managed to finally let it go now, but I've been smoking pot for a long time. It's been my one thing. I haven't been drunk in over a decade. I've had through phases where I've taken MDMA with friends and stuff like that. I'm open about that. I've done a few psychedelic journeys here and there as well. But when I was like from like 15 to, well, sorry, I should really say from 17 to like 21, 22, I was like, I went full druggo, like anything I could get my hands on. Like I went through a phase, I was like smoking meth, and because that's what was going around, we were just like, well, this is the meth phase, because just it's like we got people that can get us meth, and now it's the speed phase, and now it's the pill phase, now it's the MDMA phase, now it's the acid phase. So I had that confidence within my body because I'd done that so much, but I really developed a really strong weed smoking habit during that time. And getting into the fitness space, then I just continued smoking pot because I was like, yeah, it makes me recover and all this kind of stuff. And so what's happening over extended use of smoking pot, that my memory starts to go, like I wasn't as sharp mentally, but physically I was fine. Physically I was still like, leading up to like my Ironman race where I still qualified for the world champs, I smoked like 3 cones the night before. I was just smoking bongs left, right and center because that was just what I was used to. And I was telling myself that was okay, but mentally I could really started to notice that my performance at work was starting to drop as well. And so I started drinking more coffee and caffeine. And then when I mentioned before I was working on my loneliness, without getting too much into my personal life, up until like very recently, I hadn't slept with someone since late last year, and that was my last partner. And I recognized that I still had like a lot of emotional immaturity with myself, and I still recognized that I was still battling lots of loneliness, and I really felt like I wanted someone to fill that gap for me. And so for the whole of 2021, for the whole of 2021, let's just say up until September, so just say November 2020 to September 2021, I hadn't been with anybody, and that was a deliberate choice because I knew that I needed to get used to being alone, and I knew you had to get completely comfortable with being myself because I had that neediness within myself. Then when I started bumping into females, then they had that same neediness as well, and we were both connecting on that immature level. And so because I was battling with the concentration issues and wanting to smoke pot when I would go home, then I would feel lonely, so I would just smoke more. And so the weed was my vice, man. The weed was my vice. And so I got to the point where I was like smoking so much weed and then wake up in the morning and struggling to concentrate that I'd like train for like 2 hours, then afterwards have like a nap and then whack a coffee. And then I'd do this search into neurotransmitters and then found out all this stuff about dopamine, and then I was researching what helps dopamine, and then I stumbled across nicotine. I was like experimenting with nicotine. And so I was in this loop where I was like super sad about being alone, super stressed about work, not feeling great with that, super disappointed in myself that I couldn't concentrate and feeling unproductive. And then I was just like doing all of that emotionally and mentally. And then and then I was like smoking and then drinking the coffee in the morning, and then having the nicotine, and all of that just kind of spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. And that really like kind of led me into those like anxiety bouts and stuff that was happening. I actually did just kind of forget where we were going with that, but that was me sharing some of the shit that I've dealt with. And now I've had to go sober because I needed to let my nervous system reaccumulate itself as well. I can't remember what the point was. I drifted off.
Me neither. Thanks for sharing this story because that reminds everyone.
I just got caught up talking about my own problems, and I'm like, is this a counseling session?
No, I think I want to remind people that everyone is a human, and I know when people will look for you and for you, they find you on Instagram. They will see that you look like a machine. You do so much. You look great, and this and that.
Thanks.
But we're all humans, and we all have problems, and we all need to solve them if we want to achieve the best potential that we are.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. It's well said. You're dead right. You're dead right.
Can I ask you what comes to mind for you when you think about when you were growing up as a kid? Like the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing is I was a fucking little psycho. That's the very first thing that pops in my head is I was just a crazy, crazy kid. Just like I was literally climbing trees and bouncing off walls.
Okay, so playing.
Yeah. I was like the epitome of an ADD child. For me, it was like it pretty much frames like my whole journey of how I became to be the person who I came to be, is because I wasn't an externally angry kid, but I was an internally angry kid because I was just so full of beans when I was growing up. From the moment I was a literal, like a moment I could move, I was like climbing and running things, and which is why I'm like training for ultra marathons and doing endurance sport and doing this 900 something cold showers, because I'm still like that. But as a child, I basically grew up knowing I was always dreaming. I always had big ideas. I was super imaginative, but I never really had many deep friendships. My whole, like, even to this day, like I'm still developing them now, which really is where a lot of that loneliness comes from. As a child, I was so energetic that I couldn't hold a friendship, because I had my best friends in leading up into primary school, which was great. And then when we moved into high school, I was kind of like, I went through this phase where I was like, kind of felt like I had a bit of a mutiny between my friendship circle. And then I spent my whole high school years just like fluctuating from friendship circle to friendship circle, because I was young, I was energetic, I was fit, I was healthy, I was charismatic, I was kind of funny to some people as well. And I was a real joyful kid, but, and I wasn't an idiot. I was actually like reasonably intelligent as well. But every phase, I was too energetic for most people, and I was too much energy that it would like push people away. Yeah, and so like I remember like when I was a kid, like I think I was about 5 years old or 4 years old, I got kicked out of my baseball team, my t-ball team, because like I was just like I was too hypo. There wasn't enough running. There wasn't enough running in t-ball. I was just sitting around and
table tennis you're talking about?
T-ball, like baseball.
Okay.
It's like baseball, but there's no pitcher, so like, they don't throw the ball. They get this little like post and they put the ball on it, and then you just hit it off the thing. So yeah, I think it's because when you're a kid, like people aren't developed at throwing yet, so that you do t-ball up until you can get into baseball. But I'd actually like I had exposed my penis to my team on like my first training session, and the coach was like, "Get out of here," and I was like, "Well,
that's something wrong."
Yeah, that's actually probably why I became a stripper, like 15 something.
At least I want to get paid.
I was gonna make paid for this, but I was so energetic as a child that like I was kind of like I was nurtured into like shutting the fuck up and being quiet, and then I was like really like I wanted to. I was real agitated, and so internally I became really self-destructive, which is kind of why I went straight into drug abuse, because it gave me a reason to abuse myself by just like taking heaps of drugs. And it was a crazy time going through that. But that's what I think about when you say what it was like being a kid, just being a little psycho.
Yeah. Can I ask you what makes you successful? What do you think makes you successful?
It was the hate. It was the pure hate, man. That's what I've had to go through this. I've learned a lot about my own stress, my own self-love, my own ability to be okay with who I am and self-acceptance, because that whole time of not being able to fit in, it's not because I was not enough, it's because I was too much, if that makes sense. And so as a kid, I've always remembered, like I always had the craziest ideas, the biggest ambitions, because I was so full of it. And I was a really good soccer player when I was leading up, because like I would never back down. They nicknamed me the horse because I was always running. And I grew up when I was 15, I had a rat's, you know what rat's tail is?
Yeah.
I had my rat's tail was 26 centimeters plaited when I was 15. It was like this long thing, but like when I was 15, I was playing for the under 18s because I just had so much energy, and I would just like go. I would go and go and go and go and go, but basically I've always woken up every single day with all this energy. It's got to go somewhere, and by not being able to fit in with my social circles, by not really felt like I could see it in school, and then like finding the drugs and being around when I was 15, I was hanging around with like 18-year-olds, and when I was 17, I was hanging out with 20-year-olds, and so that's why I was able to get my hands on all these drugs, and everyone was tradies and stuff. And I've always had this sense of potential within me. That's the definition of a high dopamine personality, which is what I am. My neurotransmitter profile is dopamine dominant, which is like an adrenaline junkie, and I'm just like every day I'm like, okay, I've got to do these crazy things, like it's within me. And because I didn't have my ways of expressing myself, I've always felt successful, but I've never been able to see it externally, and that made me so angry, man. It was so furious, and that's why I just work so hard, and that's why I would just smoke so much drugs, because I'm just like, fuck it, like I can smoke all this pot and I can still fucking like, even recently, this was like last year, I was like, I'm going to ride to Mandarin back, and I smoked a cone and then packed a joint in the back of my cycling thing. And I rode for like 8 hours, just like super stoned. I was just smoking the whole time because like it calms my mind down, but my body can just like go and go and go and go. And yeah, so that's the success for me originally was because I was super angry. I was super disappointed not being able to express myself.
My next question, I don't know if the answer is going to be the same, but what are you most grateful for?
It is that. Yeah, well, to be honest, is my parents that loved and supported me through thick and thin. That was it. So, because even though I was angry and I did I acted out, like I went to a good school. My parents did everything they could to support my ambitions. In recent years, they were so concerned about my risky behavior that they tried to talk me out of everything that I went to chase my dreams. They tried to talk me out of it, and that made me angrier. And I was like, well, fuck you, mum and dad, I'm going to do it instead. And so I actually lied to them about starting the gym. And I was a stripper. I'd been a topless waiter, like a male entertainer, for about 3 years before I told them. They didn't even know.
3 years?
Yeah, they didn't. Nobody knew. I didn't want anyone to know. I was just doing it behind everyone's back. And I was just making all this cash and just like kind of hiding in my room and stuff. Like, but my parents did always support me, and that gave me that baseline sense of safety and security and stability. And so, I'm grateful for them putting a roof over my head, and my dad like really taught me to work hard as well. And that was really what got me to my successful point now. Is just like I'm a never give up kind of kid. Yeah,
I can see it.
Yeah.
You started stripping like when?
I think I was 20. I was 20 or 21 when I started stripping. Yeah.
How old are you now?
28. Yeah, it sounds about right. Yeah, I retired 2 years ago, and I was stripping for 6.5 years, but I took 1 year off in between. I retired and then came back for like 6 months.
Did you see the beginning was very, like there was more money in that business?
Yeah, there was definitely more money back then. Yeah, more people were spending, and there's less guys in the industry as well.
Yeah, now it's everyone.
But at the same time, man, like. The standard is still quite low. I actually went back to the club recently to run a training, and I actually did. I couldn't help myself, but this is only like a month ago. Like less. It was in September. It was like the first or second week of September.
Yeah.
And they asked me to come back and just run a training at the club, and I was sat down with all the new guys, and I was sharing my story and told them the things that I know now that I didn't know when I was a stripper. I'm like, this is what I wish I knew. And it was about like being about healthy masculine, and I was talking about the ribs and coming up and really embracing think about the king. You don't want to be like a warrior that when he's trying to prove himself.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to present safety.
The alpha male.
Yeah, but like a healthy alpha male, like a comfortable alpha male,
A real alpha, that's what I'm talking about.
Real alpha male, yeah. And the guys were like, no shit. And then some of the guys were like, what about this? What about this? And I was like, well, fuck it. I was like, tell you what, I may have brought my towel with me just in case. And so I told the guys, I was like, I'll walk the floor with you. Let's hustle some lap dances together and we'll go around. And so like, and the club had just opened, and then one of the boys was like, Hens Night had just come in. And they were sitting at the booth right by the, where the front door is when you come into the left. They were sitting right there, and he was just yarning with them all. And I just kind of slithered in there, and I was like, "What's going on? Talk to me about your night. We got a Hens Night, beautiful stuff." And I was like, "What about you? Aren't cool?" And I'm like, "All right, who's the naughty one?" And like, she's the naughty one. I was, who's the nice one? She's the nice one. I was like, "All right, naughty one, come here." And then I was like, "We got a Hens Night here. Is that what the go is?" She's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Tell you what, there's two of us here. Can I do a lap dance? This is what we do. I'm gonna get full naked for you all. Like, what do you reckon? Like, can we get a bit cheeky tonight?" And she was just like, "Oh, I don't know if they're gonna like it and stuff." And I'm like, "Tell you what, like, what do you think their boundaries are?" And she was like, "Look, I don't know if they want to get naked." And I'm like, "All right, well, what if you split that half into that can be the naked side, and this can be the non-naked side?" She's like, "That's a brilliant idea." And I'm like, "This is what I'm here for."
Solve the problem.
Like, yeah, what do you reckon? And then she's just like, "Well, we do have 2 lap dance tokens." I was like, "That'll do." And I just grabbed these 2 lap dance tokens, like, and this was the new guy, and I was like, "Bro, take these fucking lap dance tokens. I don't need these. I make my money for myself. Don't worry about it, bro." And like, I gave him these tokens. I was like, "Thanks, bro." And I was like, "Grab your towel, we're on," And then like, we were just grinding. I was like, "Follow my lead," like, because I gave him the lap dance tutorial, and I was just body rolling on these women, and before we knew it, we were like full naked. But because it wasn't in the lap dance booth, it was in the middle of the club, and all the women were looking at us, and then like, we were having a great time. And then the women that were like no naked, they were just like fuck it, like, get naked, you know? So we had both of us were full naked and we were just like running across the table doing these lap dances for these women. And we were laughing, they were laughing. It was a great time. But then I looked and everyone in the club, they were laughing. They were having a great time. And all the guys were like, shit, we've never done lap dances this early, because like the club had only been open for like 15 minutes. And so, or maybe like 30 minutes. And so like the moment that happened, the energy was in the club and it just went crazy. And I didn't leave till like just after 1 o'clock. Oh, sorry, just after 12 o'clock, sorry. I ended up making a couple $100 because the first time at that club, when I was working, I never had a night where I couldn't do all the lap dances. And Saturday night, I couldn't keep up. Like women were trying, they were trying to give me money, and then like, they were like, and Taylor Black's coming on stage. Taylor Black's my stripping name. Taylor Black's coming on stage. And I was like, oh shit. So I was like running over to on stage, and I went to go back to them to like take their money again, and then another lady just like throws me $100, and I was like, oh, let's do it, you know? And but it was a crazy time. But I do miss. I wouldn't go back, but taught me a lot.
Now you have agency as well.
Correct. Yeah. I've got
what's the name of it?
Alpha Male Entertainment.
Alpha Male. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. For the listeners here, I actually met Josh probably 5 or 6 years ago. When we both used to work as strippers in the club.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And I actually met some of the most amazing people, if not the most amazing people, through that club. Whether it's, you know, like people that used to work there, people, customers.
Yeah, definitely.
What's coming up for you in the near future?
At the moment, like things are looking pretty crazy at the moment. I've got my main thing that I'm doing is the 50K ultra marathon that I'm running. This is in my personal endeavors at the moment. We've got a 50K ultra marathon coming. I've just planned it to be done in November, end of November. So I'm pretty much in running. So I was getting into Ironman endurance stuff, and I was going to do, I actually qualified for the World Championships for the Ironman 70.3, which is meant to be held. They just raced like this year, but I wasn't going to go because of COVID. So I actually turned down my qualification. Excuse me. And then next year I was going to re-race it again and then do the World Championships in December in New Zealand, but then they cancelled both of those. So both of those have been cancelled because of COVID. So at the moment I've got a 50K coming up, and I'm going to do a couple like ultra marathon, couple like trail races and stuff here and there. And there's like a half marathon I'm going to do in a weight vest and Speedos just cause it'd be fun. I'm doing that. That's in November as well. And then next year I'm going to do, there's a race called Birdie's Backyard Ultra. Oh, sorry, no, it's going to be Hurdy's Front Yard, the one that's going to do, and it's a 6.7 kilometre loop on the hour every hour until there's no one left. And so I'm going to try and clear 100 Ks then, which is about 15 hours. So just 15 laps for 15 hours. And then there's also, there's a trail down south called the Cape to Cape, and it's like a 2 to 3 day hike. I'm going to try and do that in under 24 hours, which is about 130 Ks. And then I'll probably train for a full Ironman at the end of the year. So that's what that's what's coming up in terms of like the training, the events. And with the business, we've got a couple of milestones to check off. We still have debt with the gym. And so the goal is to be debt free by the end of next year. And once the gym is debt free, then that's my first like entrepreneurial journey that we can get signed off on. So that's a business that we would have built from nothing to scratch, or to like fully sustainable, where we have the staff in place, we have the manager in place, we have the marketing and the systems in place for us to we'll fully step back, but I'll probably like keep running. We'll keep the business running, but the goal for me is actually to become a full-time content creator, because sharing what I've shared in this podcast, I'm like, this is where I need to be. This is what I want to do. And I've literally spent like the last decade like trying. I was doing like calisthenics, I was doing weight training, I was doing Ironman, doing ultra marathons. I've been studying posture, I've been studying anxiety and stress and the nervous system. So I've spent the last decade really like finding my own limits and really exploring things. And I've battled lots of drug abuse in that time as well. So I've just learned so much about the human spirit and what our body's capable of. And so now what my goal is to really collaborate and consolidate all of my learnings into a way to really keep our training philosophy going and keep that live. And I've always wanted to move online, but now that the business is starting to stabilize, it's now time to take that next step. So, and then that means I can keep training, do these events and sharing them and vlogging them and sharing, like being the person I'm like, this is because I've done so many cold showers, and this is because I've studied this, and because I've done all this kind of stuff. I know what the body needs and what I'm capable of, and I really want to spend my time like just doing more and more events. I'd love to do like a 100 miler, which is like a 160k run. I'd like to do like there's a, you know, that's like 2 or 3 days worth of running. So pretty keen to get on the adventures and stuff and get into adventure sport and all that. And so that's where I'm going to be heading over the next 12 months.
Okay, it's a lot of things. And if you think right now, this moment in life was a chapter in the book that is your life, what would you call this chapter?
Just the beginning.
The beginning?
This is just the beginning, man. I'm only just getting started. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. I've actually, I genuinely do want to be an author. I want to be an author. I want to write a couple of books, and that's always been the goal. And also the main goal is to be a public speaker and to make a TED Talk. Now, I really want to earn the right to do a TED Talk, and so I really want to dedicate the next couple of decades to really refining my craft and going on these extreme adventures to really show people that this is really what can happen if you want to take this path. And I know that as a high dopamine personality that most people aren't going to want to do what I want to do, but they do want to be there for it. And so if I can vlog and storytell as I go through that process, I can share the wisdom that I learned from doing these things without them actually having to do that. And so I really see a place in society in terms of like what my purpose is and, you know, like what are my God-given gifts, and as I put on this planet, I really see myself as being one of those people that just shares the stories from actually pushing myself to my extreme limit and coming back with that information and for the people.
Yeah, that's what you want to be remembered for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And being a good father as well. I'm completely single now, but I'm definitely going to be a wicked dad. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah, actually we had a chat before about this. My kid is going to be a machine.
Yeah, the kid's going to be a little crazy. If he's got my DNA, he's going to be a little crazy little fuck as well. I'm just kind of
Plus the knowledge.
And the knowledge is there.
And the application of the knowledge.
Yeah, they'll be healthy, and I still want them to be free to be whoever they want to be and do what they want to do, but their Homo sapien version of themselves is going to be completely optimized. Whether they don't need to push themselves as hard as I want to, but I think if dad's still doing that stuff, they're going to model that off that anyway. But they're going to know about their health. They're going to know about their breathing. They're going to know about meditation. They're going to know about cold exposure, and they're going to have really good nutrition principles and sleep habits. And so whether my daughter wants to be like just a lady that cleans, she's going to be the healthiest fucking cleaner that's ever walked this planet, you know. And if my son wants to be a speaker like me, he's going to be the healthiest fucking speaker that's ever walked this planet, you know. If he just wants to be a diesel mechanic like I didn't want to be, he's going to be the healthiest fucking diesel mechanic that he ever wants to be. And so, I think, it's not fair to impose our values on our kids and what we want for them. However, I think it is fair to impose values, but I do believe, as of this state, as a non-father, I think it's fair. I believe it's fair to impose high standards of being a healthy Homo sapien.
I think that at the moment they are exposed to health.
That's going to be their environment, so they will adapt to that. Like they're just going to wake up. They're going to be born into an environment where both their parents love each other. And I'm going to make a good effort for that as well. But parents are open communicators, and we openly communicate with them, and they're always going to be raised off like healthy organic food and homegrown food. I'm going to have my mini farm on my little house and stuff. So I've got good nature around me, and I'm going to teach the kids, and they're just going to be exposed to lots of beautiful, the environment's going to be really healthy for them to grow up in. And so,
where can people find you? People are going to look for you.
Yeah, definitely. Social media is the best place to find me. I'm most active on Instagram, which is at the Joshua Hardy, THE, the JOSHUAHARDY. It's my full name. And the gym is SMAcademy AUS, so SM Academy AUS, which is Strength and Motion Academy is my gym. And so just find us on the Instagrams, and you can flick me a DM. I'm always about DMs. I got lots of DMs to reply to, but I just love connecting with people.
Yeah, so. Where is your gym located?
We're in Midvale, 6056. So we're at the base of Perth Hills on Great Eastern Highway, basically on the cusp of Midland and Midvale. And it's a beautiful space.
You also want to plug the strip agency?
Yeah, stripping agency is not Male Entertainment. It's Alpha Male Entertainment, and so You just type in at Alpha Male Perth, or if
Yeah.
you just Google Alpha Male Entertainment, you'll find our website.
So what do you cover usually? Like
Just hens nights and birthdays mainly. We've got topless waiters and male strippers, which we label as male entertainers,
Yeah.
and topless gentlemen, because that's the vibe that we roll with. And we got a bunch of good guys working for us as well.
okay, fair enough. I have these for you.
Oh, legend, man!
They're amazing. You know them.
No, 100%. I actually need more. I've taken both of these, man.
Yeah?
I need more of these. Yeah,
They sponsored this episode, and
beautiful! What awesome, Vlad.
I use
Thank
them
you very
myself.
much.
I want to thank Bix Recovery for sponsoring this episode. Bix is a recovery tablet for everyone, but especially for those who train super hard and lose more minerals. I personally use this supplement daily so that I can get my vitamin C, magnesium, sodium, BCAAs, bromelain, calcium, potassium, vitamin E, Q10, iron, and B12 all in one tablet. Crazy, right? That way you won't need to buy 3 or 4 different tablets to get what you actually need. And guess what? It also contains your daily dose of zinc you might just need. Also, since you stick with us this far, you can go ahead and use our discount code UNSTUCK20 to receive 20% off when you buy anything from BixVitamins.com, so that you can finally try Bix Hydration tablets for yourself.
Yeah, I do. I actually literally use these myself as well.
And also remind you, I have the book for you.
The book,
for everyone
yeah.
that is listening, read this book. It's called The Power of Now.
Yeah,
It
by
has
Eckhart
changed my life when it comes to, like just understanding my own thinking patterns and getting less stressed, 100%. So I bought you one, and I have to remember. You have to remember.
Yeah,
you have to remind me to
grab it.
to grab it.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, man.
And I can't wait to have another one of these episodes.
Yeah, I'm
because I
looking
know
forward to be here.
You have so many things to talk about, and hopefully, I know for sure that people are gonna really enjoy this podcast and the knowledge.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Finished.
Cheers.
Thanks again for tuning in into Unstuck. Do you want to know more about a particular subject? Or tell us what your favorite takeaway was from this podcast? Make sure to check us out on social media at Unstuck with Nick. Nick is spelled N-I-C-K. Easy. Also, feel free to share the love. We're here to help as many people as we can. By leaving a great review on Apple, Spotify, and all the other platforms, you'll be helping us do just that. Have a great day and stay healthy.